The story begins with a description of our heroine's feelings, because she thought that she was already used to it, but in fact, everything was just as awkward for her. Perhaps it was because of the chilling gray eyes that looked at her, as if burning right through her. When they first met, the girl could not even think that he would look at her like that. When she asked where they would do it today, the guy replied that the cheek. It's just that at the moment he is wearing gloves and in uniform, so it's better to do it on the cheek. Our heroine objected that he could take off his gloves, but the young man replied that no, because his hands were cold. The girl held out a magic crystal to his face and said that she was measuring his temperature. The young man was cold, but not as cold as before. If he feels hot, then let him just say so. The guy replied that she does not change because she knows very well that he is never hot. Dianta stated that he has not yet fully recovered. Perhaps the day will come when he will feel the heat. The young man took her hand and said that this would not happen, after which he added that she was always very warm. The girl was reborn as the heroine of a book. At first, her life was the same as others, but due to her carelessness, an accident occurred, after which she remembered her past life. Dianta had an accident at the age of 19, and her present became the world of the novel in which she was stuck. The main plot revolved around misunderstandings between the main characters. She had often read such books in the past. They had a special charm when, while reading, your hands sweated and your heart began to beat faster. However, the story is interesting to read while it remains on the pages of the book. The guy stated that she seemed to like someone else. What should he do? The girl replied that he just saw her talking to another man and misunderstood everything. This handsome guy is her own older brother, whose name is Haint Valerian, and he is none other than the main character of the novel. The main hobby of a young man is to suffer because of all sorts of nonsense. The young man said that his beloved said that she liked someone. Our heroine objected that this person could be him. When the brother exclaimed that this simply could not be, Dianta asked why, since he had become very close to her lately. The young man added that he didn't think this was true, since he had many shortcomings. Our heroine thought to herself that she really wanted to punch him, since he was impenetrable. It's not the first time that she, as a younger sister, has to watch his senseless whining and soul-searching. According to the storyline, the main characters will be engaged in nonsense for another 3 years, completely not understanding each other. It would be better if she puts an end to this madness, at least for the sake of her own peace of mind. Exactly a year later, Dianta congratulated Sharon Raffaello, who is the main character of the novel, on her engagement. No one even suspects how much business she had during this year. Since childhood, she rarely attended various events, so she had few opportunities to get to know Sharon. At first, her older brother told her about Raffaello, but it turned out that they were the same age and had a lot in common between them. At some point it turned out that the girls became real friends. But naturally, this all happened thanks to the fact that she made great efforts to bring the two main characters closer together. Still, this was no longer so important, since finally, the day of reward for all her suffering had arrived. Our heroine stated that her friend decided to wear this dress, and it suits her very well. Sharon replied that yes, she decided to wear the outfit that they chose together with her, because Dianta is one of those who knows her very well. The girl said that it was time for her to go, but let her get ready and also come to the engagement. The main character thanked her for helping her so much in preparation. In general, relatives should do this, but Raffaello's parents died early, and her brother is too far away. The friend must have been very lonely in this huge mansion. But after the end of the engagement, there will be a happy ending. Suddenly, there was a cry from outside that the man had a letter from the Duke of Iberk, so the gate must be opened immediately. Dianta did not understand what kind of urgent news there could be on the day of the engagement. Perhaps regret that he could not be present at the holiday of his beloved sister, or something connected with a blessing. When the night rushed past, goosebumps ran all over the girl's body. But you shouldn't beat yourself up so much, because only a happy ending awaits everyone. However, on that day, they received news from Raffaello that the engagement had been broken off. It was supposed to be a happy day when the guys were officially engaged, a celebration that everyone only blessed, and the two loving people who received this approval were incredibly happy. There were happy faces of loved ones around who saw off the young couple to a happy start to their life together. Our heroine was really looking forward to this, but now the older brother got drunk every day out of boredom, and a close friend whined endlessly, washing herself with tears about her unhappy love. Moreover, according to the plot, even a villain appeared who came into Dianta's confidence and tried to slander that she was to blame for their breakup. There was even an episode where her life was in danger. The girl tried to put an end to these constant misunderstandings, so for her, this engagement was something like the fruit of long and hard work since she played the role of Cupid. When sad Sharon approached her, Dianta asked if everything was okay. Maybe something had happened. The main character quietly muttered that she had just talked to her older brother. The girl immediately noticed that he had just been glowing with happiness and now suddenly turned dark. Were they really not in harmony until the very day of the engagement? She won't have to improve their relationship after the wedding. What happened? Dianta asked what happened. Her brother behaved somehow incorrectly, or perhaps offended her in some way. Raffaello trembled all over and exclaimed that it seemed to her that the engagement would not happen. If so, then it was only her fault. Until this moment, they both looked so happy, and there was no sign of trouble. But why did such a turn of events happen? Our heroine looked carefully at her friend and asked if she could tell the reason. Sharon whispered that a knight had come from the northern lands with a message from his brother. She was very busy with the engagement, so she could only read it. Now the young man could not authorize their marriage. When she told him that she wanted to get engaged to Haint, he probably thought that she just really liked the young man. But as soon as she said that they were preparing for the ceremony, the guy replied that he could not allow an engagement to a young man whom he had not seen in person. But she doesn't want to part with her older brother because she loves him very much. Suddenly, Haint appeared, who asked his sister not to upset his bride. Raffaello objected that she did not upset her. The girl just felt that she should tell her. Then the maid came up to the main character and whispered something in her ear. Sharon immediately changed her face and said that she needed to leave for a while. Valerian immediately asked his sister to catch up with her. The girl asked why he didn't follow her himself. The young man replied that he would at least run after her now because he wants to be close. But if he is not with the guests, then bad rumors may spread. Dianta said she would be back soon and thought it was just a simple problem that would be easy to solve. But opening the doors, she saw her friend sobbing on the knight's shoulder, and he was trying to calm her down. These gray eyes, which were like a haze that had barely appeared, that disappeared again. A man on whose chest Sharon could calmly cry, could this really be the Duke? Our heroine often visited the house of the Raffaello family, so she saw portraits of her brother and sister many times. The youngest is a very bright person and looks like a sparkling blue lake, and the eldest was rather cold, to whom any interests were alien. The atmosphere was like in a thick fog. The portraits were painted when he was, and now the guy is already after numerous battles with monsters. His figure has probably changed, just like this knight who stands in front of her. The young man's hair was not silver, but his eyes were just as cold. Judging by the oppressive feeling that she had inside, this is definitely the Duke of Iberk. When the guy put on the helmet, the girl asked if he was really going to leave right now. The young man replied that since he showed her the letter, let him sit in this room for a while, calm down, and wipe away his tears. Then he added that it seems he didn't close the door when he came in, so he'll be back now. After which he told our heroine that the Duchess was crying now, so if she wants to come in, then let her come in, but if not, then let her leave the room. Dianta noted to herself that he was simply terrible. First, she needed to calm down, but she was tormented by the question of why the guy left the northern lands. At the age of, he lost his parents and received the title of Duke from an early age. He saw the dark side of aristocratic society. His younger sister was always at the center of his choice, and he never once disobeyed the order of the emperor, which was tantamount to self-flagellation. In the imperial palace, they silently watched the young man, waiting for the moment and looking for his weak points. It was as if he was in exile in the north and had never left there, so I decided to return to that room in order to find out at least something. But having opened the door, our heroine abruptly collided with a young man and accidentally touched him. Such a frosty cold emanated from the night that her hand immediately began to freeze. Then it dawned on her that she had collided with Sharon's older brother and sharply pulled back. Due to the sudden movement, something pinched in her pelvic area, and she screamed loudly. The Duchess came out to the sounds of strange commotion and asked in surprise what Dianta was doing here and whether she was injured. Our heroine asked not to touch her, as it was only getting more painful. The guy asked for forgiveness for being too careless, so he didn't notice her, and then added that he had to go. He wouldn't interfere with their conversation. The girl said that Raffaello's eyes were swollen, and his makeup was smudged. If she appears in this form in front of the guests, then everyone will think that this is a marriage of convenience. But in principle, this can be corrected if you slightly change your makeup and cover your face with a veil. Dianta decided to carefully ask who it was, because she was crying precisely because of that night, whether Duke Raffaello had sent him by accident. Sharon replied that the young man brought a message from his brother. Handing it to our heroine, the girl asked to read it because she was crying so much that she did not have time to do it herself. This knight will stay in the palace for a month, so she would still know about what is written in the letter. It was said there that as soon as everything was ready, let the sister come north with the knight he had sent. Dianta exclaimed, "Has he gone completely crazy? What other northern lands?" I thought to myself that I couldn't let Sharon leave, so she needed to meet with this Iberk. Dianta rattled off that there was no need to tell Haint anything, since this was too shocking news, even for her, and she needed to get some fresh air and would be back soon. On the way, our heroine thought that there was no such episode in the novel where Raffaello had to go north. Apparently, it happened that way because she influenced the course of events. Judging by the knight's clothes, he most likely rode on a horse. So to begin with, the girl came to the stable. She really hoped that the guy had not left yet, but suddenly she heard a sound, as if something heavy had fallen inside. Looking inside, Dianta saw that the young man was lying on the ground, in an unconscious state. Our heroine realized that he was suffering from magic, poisoning an unknown disease that exists only in the northern lands. In the novel, one alchemist accidentally discovered this disease. It appears only in visitors who have been in the north for a long time, so it is difficult to identify. Visitors who have been under the influence of magic for too long are infected with mana. In this world, it is like a second heart. When mana is polluted, all physical processes in the body are disrupted. While a person is in the north, magic replaces it so the body works as before. This means that being in the northern lands ensures safety. But if a person leaves those places, then he urgently needs to return back. This was the reason why Iberk had to resolve the relationship between the two main characters. The result that she so strived for was far from a happy ending. She was too keen on connecting two people. Therefore, I believed that poisoning by magic could serve as a reason to allow their marriage, but simply reading about it in a novel and seeing the disease in reality turned out to be completely different things. Our heroine cannot leave it all like this, so she must cope and find a solution to this problem. The girl hid the young man under the blanket, and the unsuspecting servant helped her put him on the horse. She thought to herself that it's good that she has memories from a past life. Dianta knew the alchemist who first discovered this disease. She then immediately went to Fernando's laboratory, although she did not know the exact location. As a result, the girl got lost because she only knew that the chimney was always smoking there. The laboratory itself looked very bright, as if real madness was going on there. After which, our heroine came across a house that very much fit this description. When she knocked on the door, Fernando dear appeared, who exclaimed irritably that everyone was already very tired and he did not need any newspapers. This young man had a great interest in the northern lands and magical poisoning for which he personally visited there, and in the end invented a cure for the disease. When the guy began to abruptly close the door, the girl exclaimed that she does not sell newspapers or preach religion. She has a request for him related to the north. There is a hidden disease in this territory. It has an order for it which is directly related to it. Deer thought that she looked somehow suspicious, appeared out of nowhere, talked about her problems, plus, she was dressed in an overly elegant dress. Deonta added that if he doubts something, then let him look under the covers, which in fact is what the young man did. After which he picked up the Duke on his shoulder and exclaimed that this is just a perfect example. Let him come in quickly. The young man warned her to be careful with the floor when she entered the room. Fernando examined him and muttered that how is it possible for the whole body to be filled with magic? Yet his theory turned out to be correct. The girl said that she wanted him to cure him of this disease. The alchemist replied that it would be difficult, even though Deer was researching this area. Until recently, he had no confidence. So now there are no drugs or any developments in the research. If this person dies, then let her give his corpse to him. Deonta exclaimed that she knew all the ingredients to make the medicine. You will need ice crystals that are saturated with the magic of the northern lands. You need to introduce holy water into these crystals, melt them in the fire, and introduce them into the patient's body. When there was a heavy pause, our heroine thought to herself that this looked very strange. She suddenly showed up and said that she knew the composition, so he might misunderstand everything. The young man asked in disbelief if anything else was needed. The girl replied that yes, since she didn't know the proportions, that's why she came to him. But she thought to herself that she needed to distract him and hush up the situation. The young man muttered that northern ice is actually not so easy to melt with ordinary fire. Fire immediately appeared in Deonta's hand, and she stated that there was no need to worry about it, since while she was here, this ingredient was the easiest to get. Deer was suspicious of her, but at the same time, he was very glad that there was a living test subject in the form of Eberk. So he replied that he would start mixing the ingredients right now. After some time, he gave her the medicine and said that to begin with he made it in medium proportions. Our heroine clarified whether the sick young man would have any side effects. The alchemist replied that he checked it using fire from a candle, and the magic did not disappear completely, but some part became a little weaker. There would be a sedative effect. Deonta immediately approached the young man in order to check whether this medicine would work. But as soon as she applied the crystal to it, northern magic began to resist its influence. The guy muttered that it was surprising why such a reaction occurred. The girl was indignant. How can he say that? Which is why it doesn't go away. Our heroine did not understand why at some point the magical power began to work against her will. She just wanted everyone to be happy. Can she really face a sad end now? When the room was illuminated by a bright blue fire, Valerian finally ceased to understand what was happening. Had she really killed the main character's brother? How can she now look into her friend's eyes? What will happen to her relationship with Haint? And if she is arrested by the capital's authorities and imprisoned, then news about the lady killer will immediately appear in the newspaper headlines. The alchemist muttered that he looked too normal for a dead man, so he needed to write this down as soon as possible. Deonta immediately looked at the young man and noted that his chest was rising and falling, which means he was breathing. Plus, his facial expression was quite peaceful. Our heroine exhaled with relief and thought to herself that it was good that he was alive. The guy wrote down that the fire was able to clear a little of the effects of magic. When he woke up, it would be necessary to question him in more detail. Valerian noted to himself that he was somewhat abnormal, but still knew quite a lot about this disease, which means he understood magic poisoning better than others. The fire did not burn for long. The flame gradually began to go out, and the acrid smoke and thin black ice completely disappeared. The girl noted that someone almost died, but continued to sleep soundly and did not suspect anything. When she pointed her finger at him to wake him up, there was no reaction. Then she decided that it was time to go, because she said that she would just get some fresh air, and left the engagement. Everyone was probably worried. But the girl did not have time to go far, as the young man grabbed her hand. The young man muttered that she was so warm, and just looked somewhere into the distance. Our heroine asked him if everything was okay, but the guy didn't answer anything, so she guessed that he was just talking in his sleep. Finger by finger, Dianta unhooked the Duke's hand, and before leaving the laboratory, left him a note so that he would not be afraid when he woke up in an unfamiliar place. In the letter, she explained how the guy ended up in this place and told about his illness called magic poisoning. And Fernando will definitely explain to him all the subtleties and details. Now she doesn't have time to think about the Duke, since she has two important tasks. The first is to return home and listen to lectures from her parents. And the second is to console your older brother, who has created chaos and disorder around him. This is an elusive genre of romantic fiction. As per its name, the novel contains elements of fantasy, one of which is a special skill that the members of the main character's family possessed. Dianta exclaimed that it was good that he caused the fire subconsciously, without the intention of setting anyone on fire, otherwise he could have burned down the whole house. As you might have guessed, their clan had the ability to cause fire. Direct descendants of the Valerian clan can control it. Thanks to this ability, all members of their family had red hair and eyes. There were even stories that in their family children were already born with fire. Haint, as soon as he and Sharon had problems, immediately got drunk and started a fire since he was unable to control his powers. Our heroine exclaimed that it's enough to set fire to everything around, or let him not leave his room at all. Why is he constantly looking for alcohol and creating riots throughout the entire estate? If a young man is so worried, then he better go to meet his beloved tomorrow and ask what's next with their engagement. Meanwhile, Ibeck felt a piercing cold and did not understand what had happened. Perhaps he died due to the fact that he had taken the lives of many other people. He thought that he would finally see her. Would he really have to leave this world without ever seeing her eyes? The guy hasn't seen Sharon for so long. A lot of time has passed without her that it's even sad to think about it. One day, my sister sent her portrait. The girl wrote that Dianta looked at her as if she knew everything in advance. She was very glad that she became friends with her. Raffaello also wrote about Haint, but every time he was mentioned, the brother felt as if Sharon was writing about him with special joy. When the young man first saw her, he realized that she recognized him. In a normal situation, he would have killed her, but the guy knew that this would upset his sister, so he pretended that he didn't know anything. The cold that he felt after leaving the north felt even more from touching her. Iberg has been running somewhere all his life and will forever remain an unhealed scar for his sister. The young man really doesn't want her to live the same life as him. They had not seen each other for so long. He still wanted to do a lot with her together. Also, talk about a lot, he fought with all his might in this abyss. But suddenly, he heard a voice as if the guy had already reached heaven. With every touch he felt warmth, and when it moved away, he did not want to let it go. As if that light was getting further away, so he reached out his hand to grab it. When the young man suddenly woke up, the alchemist immediately asked how he felt. Maybe he was very cold or hot. While Fernando was asking the next question about when his symptoms began to appear, the Duke grabbed him by the throat. After which the young man hissed what kind of place this was and who he even was. The next day, our heroine immediately went to the laboratory. The guy said that there was no need to worry, everything was fine with him. Now the alchemist tried to ask how he was feeling, but the young man almost strangled him. Moreover, the Duke asked to make a magic item for him. Then she returned home, and she and her brother went to the Raffaello estate. The girl thought to herself that it was good that he woke up. Wouldn't it be too strange if he asked her friend where the knight she saw yesterday was? Arriving at the place, Dianta noted that everything was there, as before, an inconspicuous mansion with no frills. Usually flowers are planted on the territory, but there was only a green lawn. This estate maintained the same appearance all year round, as if time had stopped there after Iberk left. Noticing that there was something wrong with her brother, the girl asked if he was okay. If a young man is so worried, then perhaps it is better to talk outside. There is a greenhouse in the backyard. There is a more inviting atmosphere there, and it will be easier for him to talk. When the guy agreed, Deonta advised him to try on the way there to talk with Sharon on various topics in order to diffuse the tense situation. The elder brother thanked her and said that it was good that he had such a sister. The greenhouse was not difficult to find since our heroine spent a lot of time there while she was trying to bring these two together. It was the only colorful place in the estate. Deonta heard that the flowers were planted by Raffaello's parents. Perhaps that's why Sharon loved this place so much. On the way, our heroine heard strange sounds, reminiscent of a battle. Then she saw the Duke, who was training on his own. Valerian noted that he is very serious, perhaps upset that due to illness, he cannot take his sister to the north. She also noticed that the young man's eyes had become a different color. Deonta greeted him, but thought to herself that perhaps he had taken the magic lenses from Fernando. The Duke replied that he could not say that his health was all right. Our heroine immediately started to leave, saying that then she should continue doing what she was doing. But the guy stopped her. The young man muttered that he heard something from the alchemist. Apparently, there was not a drop of lie in these words. The young man is grateful to her for taking care of his younger sister, but this is completely different if she told a lie. Then Ibek will not forgive it. The girl thought that this was some kind of test, so she pretended that she did not understand what he was talking about. When the Duke took her hand, Valerian immediately felt this piercing cold, after which she sharply pulled her back and exclaimed suddenly, "Someone will see them." But the guy stated that it was not a lie. Our heroine replied that of course, except for Sharon, she is in no way connected with him, therefore, why cause harm for no reason? The guy said that she didn't even ask who his sister was, and what the name of the unfamiliar knight was, who suddenly spoke to her first. It dawned on Valerian that she had made a mistake, and yet the young man was checking her. But Ibek added that he was going to do this himself. Perhaps in the next month, he will have to see her as often as Sharon. So he believes that it is better to tell the truth right away. If she tells others about this, then nothing good will end for her. The girl was indignant. Why should she tell this? Because Raffaello is her friend, so she will keep his secret a secret. He just can't understand one thing: why he will see her as often as his sister. The Duke explained that according to the alchemist, if he needs to be in the capital for a long time, then it is better to recharge himself in advance with energy opposite to the north before the symptoms of the disease appear. Deonta exclaimed that if he just needs fire, then she doesn't necessarily need it. He can use the fire from the fireplace or from something else. The young man objected that there was no such reaction from other objects. As from her fire, there was no other way, except for her personal presence, to mitigate the attacks of his illness. Our heroine wondered if the research had really progressed so much. First these magic lenses, then the words of Fernando. Was it really possible that while she was away, he managed to achieve such results? Now it is clear why Ibex started talking about his sister and hinted at his identity. Under the pretext of Sharon, he hopes to receive help from Valerian at any time. Suddenly, the main character appeared, greeted her friend warmly, and specifically called her brother by a different name, Diego. Haint asked the girl who this young man was. She replied that he was probably seeing him for the first time. This is Sir Nathan Diego, who came from the north. He will stay for about a month and will accompany her everywhere. The young man muttered what this same knight who brought the message means. Raffaello decided to smooth out the tense atmosphere and exclaimed that since they had met, they could have tea. After some time, Sharon said that let them communicate for now, and in the meantime, she would bring dessert, which Sir Diego would probably like. Noticing that there was a heavy pause, Deonta thought to herself that there was no need to leave her alone with them. The younger brother hissed that if the guy came from the north, Sharon was probably seeing him for the first time. But it feels like they are quite close to her. He believes that at heart, the young man is more friendly, although you can't tell from the outside. The Duke replied that he was quite sociable, unlike some. Valerian muttered that the words he said somehow strained him a little. When Diego replied that he did not say them for this purpose, our heroine thought to herself that that's enough already. This is Raffaello's brother. Then the guy asked if he behaved this way because the lady paid attention to him. It was somehow very childish. If the Duke saw this, he would immediately strip him of his title. Listening to this skirmish, Dianta thought to herself that this couldn't continue like this, so it was necessary to stop them somehow. After which, a brilliant plan came to her mind, because Haint can recharge it with energy, so everyone will be happy, both the sister and the sister's husband. In this way, she will get rid of the constant presence of the Duke, and at the same time, the guys will become friends. A little later, Sharon offered her brother to try a cake, which was not as sweet as the previous one, but felt more tender, so he should like it. The young man noted that it was really tasty. But the girl added that she had prepared tea for him separately. It should suit his taste, unless his preferences have changed. Our heroine thought to herself that it was very good that she had sent the maids outside, since if any of them had seen this, they might have misunderstood the situation. Therefore, she decided that it was necessary to intervene, after which she asked for forgiveness, and said that that day she said that she would take a short walk, but in fact, she simply disappeared, wondering if her friend was scared. Raffaello replied that yes, but then Dianta sent a note, so everything is fine. She also heard that the girl had not been feeling well since the morning. After she added that on top of everything else, there was such news, so she could imagine what state her friend was in. Our heroine replied that she had actually been deceived. Then she began to mutter that she wrote in the note that she was not feeling well, but in fact, it was not so. She was very worried about something, so she wanted to say, but suddenly the young man whispered that she should not think of saying anything about the illness. Dianta was very confused, and Raffaello began to ask what really happened to her. Valerian reported that she actually ran after Sir Diego and told him that she could not be taken north, and then asked him to convey these words to the Duke. Fortunately, the knight was delighted by their friendship, so he agreed not to take her to his older brother, and replied that he would talk to him. The main character immediately asked the young man if everything was really as she said. The guy looked at Dianta with a withering gaze. She thought to herself that she was already glad that thanks to the magic lenses, his eyes finally became normal. But he looks very scary. But suddenly the young man confirmed her words and said that he answered exactly like that, since he personally needs to report to the Duke whether the lady on the estate is doing well. He will personally watch her for a whole month. Therefore, he warns that they will see Madame Valériane very often. After this conversation, everyone was enveloped in an atmosphere of absolute awkwardness. Sharon said that she was sure that the young man would like these people, because there was no person in the world who would treat her as well as Haint. Our heroine did not understand what kind of expression her younger brother had on his face, because it was necessary to rejoice, but he drooped even more. Plus, in front of the person who will be watching them for a whole month, you just need to demonstrate harmony and happiness. Suddenly, the young man asked what Dianta's words meant, that Sharon would not be taken to the north. A chill ran down the girl's spine, because it was a secret, and she accidentally blurted it out and didn't even notice, since she was watching Burke's reaction. The young man continued that if his sister had not mentioned this, would she really have continued to hide this news from him? After this, the young man suddenly jumped up and said that he needed to get out. The main character began to get nervous and shouted that they needed to talk. Let her stop. Valerian thought that it was necessary to correct this situation, so she said that she would follow him. But Raffaello exclaimed that there was no need. It would be right if she herself explained everything to him. The girl felt extremely awkward, since obviously this conversation would take some time. Therefore, she decided that it would be better to just leave. and said that she suddenly remembered that she had urgent matters. When the Duke abruptly put the cup back on the saucer, Dianta flinched as she was frightened. The guy said that no matter how you look at it, the words she said still haunt him. Our heroine thought to herself that she really hoped that he was not going to interrogate her, how she knew about his illness. When the young man added that she said that she would entrust this matter to her brother, but she did not mean a charge of energy, the girl did not understand what he was talking about. But Burke continued that if so, he would say right away that it was better for her to discard the idea of trusting this to her brother. He doesn't like him that much yet, but the mere thought that the guy will touch him makes him tremble. Our heroine was upset that her plan to make them friends failed, and muttered that it was good. Plus, he hates it when someone knows about his weaknesses. The young man hopes that she understood what he meant. Dianta replied that it means he is not entirely comfortable, because she is Haint's sister. If the Duke does not mind, then she can look for another person who controls fire. The young man answered sharply, no, only a completely stupid person would not have questions about his personality, and besides, he cannot trust those who act for their own benefit. The girl exclaimed that it was true, it would be better for as few people as possible to know his secret. Then she added that there was a whole month ahead, so he could rely on her. She would make every effort to take care of him. Hearing these words, the young man smiled slightly and replied that he would then wait impatiently. The girl noted to herself that it was the first time she had seen him smile, or that he was simply mocking her. Then the Duke stood up from the table and declared that since they had agreed on everything, it was time for him to go. Valerian thought in confusion that maybe she should also go home, since she was very tired. Meanwhile, the maids were discussing what was better to prepare now than to let the water cool down when the mistress called them. It's true they say their hostess was the most beautiful at the ball, but how can you walk normally with such weight? When our heroine approached them, the maids immediately greeted her, but she replied that she shouldn't because she just wanted to say that she was leaving. And they looked very busy. The women exclaimed that their mistress had received an invitation to a ball in honor of Her Highness's birthday, so they were doing everything possible to make her the most beautiful at this ball. Dianta muttered in surprise that she didn't know anything about the princess's birthday. The maids asked that maybe she just didn't check the letters. They say that this is a very important celebration before the princess comes of age. So invitations were sent to all the aristocrats. The girl thought that recently she had been so busy with the two main characters that she had not attended any balls or tea parties. She kept telling everyone that she was very busy and could drink tea on her own. Gradually, even her parents stopped persuading her to go to some event, after which she thanked her for telling her and said that she had a lot to do. So it was time to go. Let them tell Sharon and Haint to talk calmly. Dianta thought to herself that it wasn't such a bad idea to have a tea party. After all, she accidentally managed to get information, so she turned her entire room upside down and finally found an invitation. Deborah Frances Bastow is the princess of the empire and the sole heir to the throne. She didn't like Burke, so she hated Sharon and constantly bullied her, the main villain of this novel. Why did the princess mock the main character? It all started with the former Raffaello spouses, whose lives suddenly began to change. But at that time, the emperor decided that this was an excellent opportunity to annex the Duchy of Raffaello, which boasted of its limitless power. He intended to betroth his daughter to Burke, but the guy refused to marry the princess for almost 4 years in a row. On the day the young man turned 19, the emperor decided to put pressure on him and offered him 2 options to choose from. The first is to marry his daughter Deborah, and the second is to go to the northern lands. If he had chosen a wedding, then his sister would have become a duchess. From childhood, she would have had to see all the dirt of the life of aristocrats with all the unsightly details. Therefore, the young man without hesitation chose to go north. On the other hand, there remained the princess, who for so many years had endured constant refusals. from a man whom she did not even love. The next morning, the maid opened the curtains and said that today there were a lot of things in her room that needed to be removed. But Dianta noted to herself that she seemed to have fallen asleep yesterday, reading the letter. When the maid asked if she had found what she was looking for, the girl replied that yes, since she was going to go with Sharon to a ball in the Imperial Palace, she was looking for an invitation. It turns out that it will be in days. Surely all the normal dresses have already been sold out, so you will have to slightly remake what is already in stock. Hearing this, the maid exclaimed irritably that this would not do. It will be the same as smearing slop all over your face and walking like this. They don't have any time at all, so they need to leave urgently. Then she shouted to another maid to start cleaning the mistress's room instead of her. After some time, the girls ended up at the Raffaello estate. Our heroine muttered that this was somehow inconvenient, and she felt extremely awkward. Daisy exclaimed that she and Sharon have approximately the same body type. The lady must have prepared several outfits. There's nothing you can do, you'll have to ask to borrow one. The lady will be only too happy to help her friend, so stop talking, and it's time to go. The local maid greeted the girls and said that her mistress was now in the dressing room for a fitting. Having gone inside, they admired how many beautiful outfits and shoes there were around. It will probably take a lot of time to try it all on and choose one thing. Suddenly, she saw the Duke and wondered what he was doing there. After all, he was pretending to be a knight. Then why did he come? She mentally asked him to leave if he had finished all his work, but stated out loud that apparently he had come here to fulfill some request. The guy replied that no, the lady asked to help choose a dress and said that he could just stand next to him and watch. Hearing a familiar voice, Sharon exclaimed that she was very glad that Dianta had arrived, because she just in such confusion. The girl chose this dress but could not decide on the jewelry. The maids try so hard, but their opinions are divided. And her friend, after all, has good taste. Will she help her choose? Our heroine replied that of course she would definitely help her deal with this situation. Then the lady turned to the knight and asked if he could help her too, since the more people choose, the better the result. After examining all the jewelry, it turned out that Dianta and the Duke chose the same jewelry and their hands touched on it. The girl immediately felt this incredible cold again, and it seemed that she was completely frozen, after which she calmed down a little and noted that, after all, she was not as cold as she was before. Our heroine wondered why he didn't let go of her hand, because she was very cold. The guy whispered that he didn't want to let her go. The Duke only moved his lips as if he was talking to himself, but she could read it from his lips. Valerian knows that because of his illness, he wants warmth. But when he spoke with such a face and held her hand, she can still understand it. But those around her will clearly perceive it incorrectly. Then she paid attention to the expressions on the faces of the maids and Sharon, and was convinced that everything was as she thought. Dianta immediately jabbered that it seemed that he also liked this decoration. She also thinks that it would be very suitable for her friend, so let her give it to her personally. Raffaello exclaimed that she really liked it. It was not in vain that they both chose this jewel. The maids objected that she had just said that she did not like the too rich green color. The girl thought to herself that while they were busy, it was better to leave as quickly as possible and away from the Duke. But suddenly the voice of Daisy was heard, who asked the lady to scold Valerian. Our heroine wondered why she had such a dissatisfied expression on her face and what she was even going to tell. The maid continued that this was a ball in the Imperial Palace, and she wanted to remake her existing outfit. Raffaello muttered that she didn't ask because she thought that her friend wouldn't want to go there. If she had known, she would have offered to prepare together. But then they all turned around sharply and began whispering about something among themselves. Our heroine did not understand what was happening, but it was clearly clear that the girls were up to something. Then the women quickly brought her one dress, but Dianta said that it was too bright, so she could not wear it. But no one really listened to her opinion, since Sharon and the maid decided that it should be very suitable for the mistress. Raffaello then turned to her older brother and asked what he thought. The young man replied that looking only at the dress, he could not say anything, so he needed to put it on. After which, he approached our heroine and began to apply the outfit to her body, but Valerian thought that he was too close to her. When Dianta pulled back a little, the guy asked what was wrong. The girl replied that she didn't think the dress suited her. The Duke whispered that there was still a whole month ahead. He would come even closer and touch her even more so she wouldn't be able to constantly run away from him. After these words, Iberk switched back to Sharon and said that the dress suits her friend very well. Our heroine wanted to immediately go home, but Raffaello offered to try on other outfits, after which she dragged her behind the curtain and began to take out shoes along with jewelry. During the fitting process, a friend asked if Haint was in a good mood. When he came back, Dianta replied that everything was fine. The guy smiled happily all day. Our heroine was very glad that she managed to calm Sharon at least a little. When they left the fitting room, the Duke sometimes allowed himself some unexpected statements, such as that the dress suits her very well. After some time, she finally managed to escape from these endless fittings and changes. Already on the street, the maid said that she would go and prepare the carriage and let my lady go down slowly. Suddenly, the young man asked if her brother had always been such a simple person, who gets angry and immediately calms down. Dianta exclaimed that he really eavesdropped. This is too much. The guy replied that he didn't intend to. He just has good hearing. The girl noted that they deliberately spoke in a whisper behind the curtain. How could he hear everything? He is not only very strong, but also has amazing hearing. Or is this possible because he is a swordmaster? Iberk added that his sister was a weak and timid girl from childhood, so he always wanted a strong and strong-willed person next to her. Valerian thought to herself that Haint, of course, requires her constant intervention, like caring for the sweet potatoes, but this is her brother, so she will not allow her to speak about him like that. The guy continued that people of this type first of all think about themselves and do not listen to the opinions of others, and Sharon has a rather cautious and calm character. It will be difficult for her to be around such a person. If they both are too careful, then it will be difficult for both of them. Dianta objected that they just like each other, that's why they behave this way. Previously, my sister always listened to the opinions of others. This is a very sweet quality. Before the debutante ball, a whole line of gentlemen lined up for her who dreamed of becoming her partner. Our heroine exclaimed that in the Empire, in fact, her brother was also considered attractive, but she thought to herself that there was no thought that she would ever praise Haint. Suddenly, the voice of the maid was heard, who said that she had to pack things, so it took some time, but now everything is ready and we can go. The girl, in a bad mood, went downstairs and agreed that it was necessary to go before it got dark. The Duke caught up with her and said that, to be honest, she could beat her brother in appearance, but it was his sister who could be considered the most beautiful lady in the Empire. Our heroine did not understand why he grabbed her and why he was saying all this. The young man wished her a happy journey and asked her to be careful on the road. Dianta noted to herself that it feels like there is not a drop of blood in his body, but he turns into a pulsating vein when it comes to his sister. She has no words, but he looks very cute. Finally, the guy added that those words were true. The dress, with embroidered red roses, suits her very well. Dianta blushed all over, but the guy continued that after coming of age, he left the capital and did not have the opportunity to often attend balls. But if compared with all the ladies he had ever met, she looked very bright. He is sure that if a girl appears in it at the ball, then all eyes will be turned to her. Our heroine was very embarrassed, so she stuttered and thanked him. But suddenly the young man added that of course he couldn't even compare her with Sharon. Valerian decided that he started all this just to praise his little sister again. Therefore, she answered with disappointment that she knew this very well, but she would still take note. After which, she immediately went to the carriage and told her maid that it was time for them to leave. On the way, the maid suggested that he liked her, but our heroine told her not to say anything stupid. Daisy objected that from the outside, it looked like they had become friends. Dianta replied that she was simply close friends with his sister, so the young man was trying to behave politely. Besides, this knight came from the north on the orders of Duke Raffaello. Therefore, it is natural that he will be attentive to everyone around Sharon. And most importantly, she is, after all, the sister of Mr. Haint. The maid exclaimed that this guy is quite dangerous, so you need to be careful with him. Meanwhile, the Duchess asked if they really didn't talk about something special with her. The guy replied that he simply loaded her things into the carriage. That's all. If he made some mistake in behavior, then he asks for forgiveness. The girl replied that no, she probably misunderstood when she looked out the window. Sharon added that from afar, it just looked as if he began to attack Dianta, and she ran away from fear. Ibek replied that he could not say she was mistaken. The young man explained that the Duke was very worried that she was too trusting. He said that he did not have time to teach her to understand people before leaving. But it seems to him that there is no need to worry about this. The sister immediately exclaimed that this is why she likes the Duke of Valerian. But the guy interrupted her and said that he was not sure about him yet. The mistress immediately became upset, and the maid said that they were waiting for her in the dressing room. When the youngest left, the guy thought that she really ran away from fear. He cannot say that he was pleased to see how Dianta was trying to avoid his presence by boarding a carriage. For the first time in his life, the young man tried to give a compliment to please someone outside, but still her eyes seemed to be looking for where to hide. She sighed deeply before every word, and it was clear that she did not trust him. As soon as he remembered her appearance, his insides turned over with unfamiliar feelings. It's unpleasant for him, but the Duke is not angry. On the contrary, thoughts about what kind of trap to set for her next time come into his head. But at the same time, he does not want to use cruel measures, as he did in the north. During the hunt, sometimes it happens that wounds remain on the prey. But if he had not tried, he would not have risen so high. If he manages to get a little closer to her, then he would be able to hold her hand much longer. 3 days later, the day of celebration arrived in the imperial palace. Mom said, just in case, that if Dianta spent the night outside the house again, she would be very angry. Our heroine replied that this would not happen. The father warned the elder brother to be careful at the ball, since he is the heir of their family. The son begged him so much, that's why they haven't officially announced it yet, because he doesn't want to say that he really thinks about breaking off his engagement with Lady Raffaello. When the young man replied that in no case, the man added that well, then let him make every effort to show his good side at the ball. If bad rumors spread about him again, as the head of the family, he will have to reconsider his decision. Then the parents went to the carriage, and the mother said that they would go first to the palace. Dianta replied that they would pick up Sharon and also join them in the celebration. On the way, she thought that she perfectly understood her brother's sadness. Recently, because of him, the entire empire was on edge. Although the engagement ended happily, there was one nuance. All the newspapers wrote that the main characters of the celebration almost did not appear all evening. And at the end, a lady appeared with a tear-stained face. What happened between the young people? Because of this, rumors spread that it was customary in their family to force their daughter-in-law to work. When they arrived at the place, the girl told her brother to go get his beloved, and she would wait for him in the carriage. Our heroine sat waiting for the young man to return with his bride, but they were gone for a long time. Instead of them, a weakened duke appeared who urgently needed help. At first, the girl thought that maybe they were on a date, or that there was a clash with the Duke again. When she felt a little stuffy, she opened the window to let fresh air in, but a very strong wind blew. Our heroine was angry that if her hair got ruined again, she would have to spend several hours on it again. Suddenly, the Duke knocked on the window and asked if he could come in to see her. Valerian immediately noticed that there was something wrong with the color of his face, and he looked unwell. Our heroine immediately asked how he was feeling and if everything was okay. The young man said that he was at his limit, and asked if she had accidentally met an alchemist. The girl replied that no, because due to preparations for the ball, she had absolutely no time. He said that he did not have enough information for experiments, so she was going to visit him after the ball. The young man muttered that it means she doesn't have crystals, and began to lose his balance. Dianta began to get very nervous and exclaimed that it was necessary to send a person to Fernando. The guy said that there was a crystal in the inner pocket. He would like her to take it out herself. When Valerian unbuttoned his clothes, she thought that she was in a very strange situation. Iberg pulled her closer and told her that when she pulled out the crystal, she would still have to touch it. Dianta thought to herself that there was no other choice, but he was so close that she could feel his breath. When the girl finally took out the crystal, and both were holding it, the guy asked if it was hard for her. She replied that no, she was just surprised that it was so cold. There was nothing to be done. The difference in temperature between them was very large. Our heroine responded by asking if it was hard for him to touch such a hot hand, but the young man replied that no, on the contrary, he felt very warm. After which the young man added that on the contrary, he really didn't want to let go of her hand. Meanwhile, Haint and Sharon were heading towards the carriage, who said that he was still her brother, and she really hoped that they would become friends. As soon as the guys heard the voices, the guy lifted her and put her next to him, after which the young man put his index finger to his lips, as if indicating that he should remain silent about this. Our heroine supported him and thought that it was unknown what they could even hear from these two, so let it be a secret. Then the young man sharply opened the doors of the carriage and hit Dianta's older brother right in the face. The Duke immediately said that he did not even notice how Haint came close to the carriage. He is such an inconspicuous person. The young man's expression immediately changed, and he muttered his words about being inconspicuous. Raffaello immediately exclaimed that since they were going to the celebration together today, they needed to do without hostility. When Iberk said that he would go and bring his horse, Sharon objected that there was no need. It was better for everyone to go together in one carriage. It was in this way that the four of them went to the ball. The friend exclaimed that she had not gone with Valerian for a long time. The young people seemed to have agreed and looked silently out the window all the way. The atmosphere was simply terrible, all the way to the imperial palace. Upon arrival, Raffaello stated that since there were four of them, they could all enter together, or she would go first with the knight. The young man objected that no, if she went accompanied by another man, then unpleasant rumors might spread. He would go with Lady Dianta separately from them. After which, he asked our heroine if she would deign to enter with him for the sake of Lady Sharon. Our heroine replied that since he insists so much, then of course, since there is no other choice left. It naturally happened that at the ball, Dianta became the Duke's partner. The imperial palace was in all its splendor as it should be. The girl was very glad that she finally got out of this carriage, where it was unbearable to ride. But there was one thing all the aristocrats present were whispering about the article in the newspaper they were discussing, that the guys had a fight right at the engagement, or she had to wipe away her tears because of the strict morals of her fathers-in-law. The times of the Valerian spouses, who were considered outstanding representatives of the family, are over. Our heroine felt out of place, and she wanted to hide somewhere as soon as possible. After which, I thought that if the four of them crowded together like this, they would attract unnecessary attention, so it would be better to split up. Then she saw the elder brother approach his beloved and ask if she would do him the honor of dancing the first dance. Raffaello smiled sweetly and replied that it would be with great pleasure. Then the young man glared at the young man and declared that he had won. Dianta thought to herself, is he a little guy or something who does Haint even want to offend with such stupid antics? When the Duke began to head towards them, our heroine ran after him and shouted after him to wait 1 second. Iberk asked in surprise what happened. The girl responded by asking the question that he was really going to leave his partner alone. Then she whispered in his ear that suddenly tomorrow they would start whispering that his friend stole her partner from him at the ball. She already directly sees this in the newspaper headlines. and Sharon may be considered a walker who cannot decide on her choice. The guy objected that he did not think that this could happen if he came up for a short time. Valerian replied that the guy has no idea how scary rumors about couples who appear together at celebrations can be. The young man replied that it was good. Then it is necessary to make efforts together so that false rumors are not spread about her. When they went to the center of the hall, Dianta asked if such behavior would be too provocative. Iberg replied that if you never dance with a partner at the ball, then it would also look strange. If she doesn't want to leave him with nothing, then let her come a little closer. Valerian looked at him and thought about what was hidden in those gray eyes, judging by his attitude towards his sister, his sacrifice and unconditional love. Everything immediately becomes clear. The guy also has feelings, but in relation to one single person, he tries to suppress them, considering them his weak point. Unexpectedly, the young man asked why she was looking at him like that. The girl clarified exactly how. When the guy replied that he seemed to see a poor puppy in front of him, the girl objected that he did not look charming. Suddenly, there was a loud cry for everyone to bow their heads. As the great son of the Bastia Empire, His Majesty, the Emperor and Princess Deborah Francis, had arrived. This was the very appearance of the main villain of the work. In the book, she was even called the future tyrant. Her words were sharp, like daggers. In the novel, there is a description that 10 years later, because of the rebels, she turned into dew at the place of execution. But whatever she was, the girl was still a direct heir, having received the special skills of a member of the imperial family. They say that the first emperor knew how to control people, but as generations passed, this ability became weaker until Deborah was born. Moreover, she was the daughter of the late empress. The image of the princess, sitting at the feet of the emperor near his throne, is imprinted in the minds of people. Suddenly, it was announced that His Highness Prince Livios Principe Basto had arrived. This young man was the half-brother of Francis. He did not have any outstanding abilities, but many praised him. When you have someone to compare with, your atrocities are even more noticeable. The emperor said that he was very glad that so many people had gathered to congratulate his beloved daughter on her coming of age. After which, he announced that they had prepared refreshments for everyone, and he really hoped that everyone present would have a fun time. After the congratulatory speeches, the princess was immediately surrounded by representatives of aristocratic families. At the same time, there was practically no one around the prince for fear of angering Deborah. Sharon at that time was thinking that there were so many people around her that she couldn't even approach her, but she invited her in order to make peace. In her imagination, the princess called the girl precisely to offer friendship. Raffaello asked that maybe they should also say hello to the princess, but our heroine said that it was better to wait a little when there were a little less people. In the meantime, it's better to separate the young people so that they don't quarrel at all. The Duchess immediately flew up to Haint and exclaimed that she had asked him that there was no need to swear. Dianta thought to herself that her brother would have to sweat a little. It was in vain that he began to bully the Duke. Because she was very embarrassed, she couldn't be the only one to suffer. Suddenly, the voice of the prince was heard from behind, who turned to Sharon. The young man said that he looked at her from afar, but did not think that this was really the Duchess. They met several times at balls before the Duke left for the north. It seems they had not seen each other for almost 4 years. From the newspapers he learned that the girl was engaged, after which he clarified whether this gentleman who is next to her is her fiancé. It seems he is the eldest son of the Marquis Valerian. Livios has heard a lot about him. They say that the guy is very capable and does a lot for the sake of the empire, working in those places where help is needed. The young man replied that he still had a lot to learn, but our heroine thought to herself that although he looks simple, a prince is still a prince, and he looks like a simple, handsome guy from the university. The guy then turned to the girl and noted that she seemed to be a Valerian lady, after which he switched to the Duke and asked what then, who is this gentleman who is next to her? Iberk bowed and said that he was honored to meet His Highness, then introduced himself and added that his name was Natan Diego. Our heroine immediately intervened in the conversation and said that this guy had come here as her partner. The knight came from the northern lands, so he really likes to look at everything, but I thought to myself that it would be better to distract his attention by pretending to be a lady who wants to arouse his interest in herself. Therefore, she added that after all, the banquet in the imperial palace was simply excellent. Everything around was incredibly beautiful. The young man stated that now everything is clear. This young man is her partner. Dianta exhaled that it seems he did not recognize the Duke. The facial features may be the same, but the color of the hair and eyes is different. And besides, his appearance now does not match in any country with what remains in people's memory. The prince continued that it was very annoying, as she could see the young man came to the ball alone and was just in search of a person who could brighten up his evening. If not for this night, he would have offered the charming lady to become his partner for this evening. Our heroine exclaimed that it was a pity if she had known she would have come alone. Livios clarified that maybe it was not too late. Suddenly, the Duke came close to her and asked if she was going to accidentally leave him here alone. His Highness laughed and noted that he seemed to like Dianta. Don't worry, he won't take his partner away from him. The young man answered with sarcasm in his voice that this was an incredible relief. Prince, I wish them a good evening and a great time at this event. After these words, Principe left their company and gradually disappeared among the invited guests. The elder brother exclaimed that the difference in his voice was immediately audible when he addressed him. The Duchess noted that Valerian and the knight were holding hands. Our heroine immediately became embarrassed and pulled back her hand, but the young man asked for forgiveness. The girl replied that it's okay. He probably had a reason. He's not one of those who would just grab a lady's hand. The Duke replied that if she wanted, then he was ready to think about the reason right now. It just seemed to him that if he didn't put an end to this situation, the prince wouldn't just leave, so he had to grab her hand. If it was unpleasant for my lady, he apologizes, but Dianta exclaimed that everything was fine. There was an awkward silence after that, and the girl thought to herself that she should pretend that she needed to go to the restroom. When our heroine was about to leave, the young man immediately grabbed her by the waist, after which he told her to be careful, as she almost fell tripping over the hem of her dress. Valerian thought to herself that this was not true. Then the young man leaned towards her and asked if he could ask her one question, whether she really intended to go with him. But the girl did not have time to answer anything, as the princess called her by name. Our heroine noted that all the guests parted like the Black Sea as the real villain of the novel appeared. The young man had such an expression on his face, as if he was shocked by this appearance. Although if you think about it, you can understand him. The Duke always wrote in letters that everything was fine with him, and the younger sister also tried to write to her brother only about good things. She is also angry about this situation, but if the Duke intervenes now, he will only harm his sister. Deborah said that she heard that the guys broke off their engagement, but they still came to her ball together. Apparently, they value each other very much. Haint asked Her Highness to allow him to say a few words. In fact, no one broke off the engagement, but the princess interrupted him and ordered him to be silent, after which she added that she was not addressing Sir Valerian. Both brother and sister are birds of a feather in childhood. She saw the Duke, even if only for a short time, he is still a scoundrel. Sharon did not expect such treatment, so she was very unpleasant. The guy behaved so impudently towards the emperor, who had only good intentions. Is the Duke doing well in the north? They say that he is called a monster. It seems that his terrible character remained the same. There was no news about him, and then only rumors reached about such a nickname. But that was already clear, wasn't it? Because of his bad character and stubbornness, his subordinates suffer. Our heroine noted to herself that of course her behavior makes her a little angry, but the princess is partly right. Dianta mentally asked Sharon to endure if she begins to show hostility due to the character of Her Highness. then the purpose of attending this ball is doomed. With just one movement of her fingers, she may never see her older brother again. So precarious was the position of the Raffaello family during Iberic's absence. When Valerian called out to Deborah, the girl said that if she had something to say, then let her try. Our heroine thought to herself that such behavior of the princess did not mean Sharon's defeat. Suddenly, the Duchess said that, as a lady to a lady, she understands her perfectly. Frances probably simply hates her brother because he rejected her marriage proposal so many times. But this is not at all due to a lack of charm in her. Her Highness was taken aback by what she heard and exclaimed that she had only just said that. Our heroine noted to herself that the girl is very modest and kind, but still a real Raffaello, and does not refuse challenges, even if her opponent is the princess herself. The Duchess continued that Deborah simply does not quite suit his tastes. She really asks her not to be angry with him for this. Then she added that she wanted to ask something if she accidentally tried the dessert, since she had some leftovers on her teeth. It would be better for Her Highness to wipe them off before all the other guests noticed. If she looks at her face, which reminds her of the Duke for so long, then her mood will spoil, and the girl cannot spoil her holiday, because today she is the main character, so it's time for her to go. The princess did not expect to hear such a thing from her, that she was confused, and could not figure out what to answer. Our heroine noticed that the young man was looking towards the exit, through which his sister had left. His eyes were full of mixed feelings. It felt like he was ready to break everything you could clearly see. All these emotions associated with Sharon. His reaction was natural and understandable. Therefore, the girl said that the young man had better go after her, but it was time for her to return home. Having seen what insults her friend had to endure, Diantha cannot help but think about it now. It was strange to look after the girl, since she forgot about her and just left. It felt as if the person closest to her had abandoned her. But in fact, Valerian always got upset when a stranger's dog, who had always happily waved her tail at her before, did not greet her once. It's better not to think about it anymore. You just need to mind your own business. Then she left, never looking back. She had a reason not to return home immediately, but to stay at this ball. Diantha should have consoled the crying. Deborah she might have questioned why cry over such a small thing, but her behavior could be the turning point. The princess initially bullied Sharon because of her resentment towards her older brother. But after today's conflict, the girl began to hate the Duchess herself. If this continues, then this Cold War may affect her too. Let her friend forgive, since she is not going to betray her. She just wants someone to leave a good impression of her. This is the only way no one will get hurt, and they will get closer to a happy ending. Deborah exclaimed. How did Diantha know where she was? Deborah heard that they were close friends with Sharon. Did she come to sort things out? Our heroine thought to herself that besides looking at her, she realized that this was not such a bad choice. If you look at it this way, she seems like just a little girl who was raised in greenhouse conditions. After which, she said that she was just tired, so she wanted to rest, but all the seats were already occupied by other ladies. Therefore, the girl went out onto the terrace and accidentally wandered into this place. Gazebos are designed for resting in them. Besides, her feet hurt a lot. Deborah's feet are probably tired too. Maybe it's better to take off her shoes too. Plus, there is no one around, except the two of them. The princess irritably asked how she could take off her shoes, or if Diantha was completely clueless. Our heroine laughed and thanked her for the compliment, but Her Highness objected that it was not a compliment. Valerian said that she thinks it's a compliment. Chutzpah is when a person doesn't care what others think of him, and also the ability to not get upset even if he made a mistake or something didn't work out for him. And if you look at the meaning of the word itself, then it can be understood as straightforward. What she thinks about it, it doesn't seem to her that it has a rather positive meaning. Her Highness muttered in confusion that she was really very impudent. When our heroine laughed out loud, the princess asked what made her laugh so much. Diantha replied that, to be honest, something was pinching in her chest until she went out into the fresh air. But thanks to her, all the irritation went away, and she even wanted to laugh. She only has a brother, but she thinks that if she had a younger sister, she would treat her exactly like that. Deborah is very sweet. Then Valerian came to her senses and thought that this was already a little too much. It was necessary to use her mind. After which, she immediately asked for forgiveness if she blurted out something unnecessary, but Her Highness replied that everything was fine. Then she added that she still hasn't met people who would treat her like that, but that's okay. When Deborah added that she was the first one to treat the princess this way, our heroine thought to herself that this meant like that she was the first one to surprise her or something. Then Her Highness stood up and said that it was time for her to go, since everyone was probably waiting. Dianta shouted after her so that she should not pay attention to others, let her behave confidently, and enjoy this day. The day of coming of age happens only once in a life, and she has every right to do so, after which she added that she once again congratulates her on her birthday. Already at home, Valerian thought that she would need to change clothes, but if she called the maid, she would have to take a bath since Daisy would definitely shout that she needed a massage and facial before going to bed. The girl really hopes that everything is okay with the princess, and she returned to the ball after their meeting. She immediately went home, so she could not check. The book described how she was ashamed of running away, which she later regretted. Suddenly, the girl began to hear strange sounds, as if someone was knocking on the window. Gradually, the knocking became stronger, and our heroine thought that the animal would not be able to hit the glass so hard in such a rhythm, and besides, it was too high there. Dianta decided that it was a ghost, so she grabbed the candlestick and loudly screamed for him to get out. But when she opened her eyes, she saw a young man who asked if she was really scared. The girl exclaimed that of course. Our heroine exclaimed how he even got there because the floor is high. The young man replied that along the way he climbed over the fence several times and broke spells. It was not that difficult, and he believed that she should strengthen her security. The Raffaello clan is known for the fact that swordmasters sometimes appeared in it. In each generation there was always one outstanding person who possessed incredible strength. According to the books, they were capable of dividing mountains and seas in half with one stroke of the sword, as well as destroying magic spells. As the girl expected, the main hero of this era was Iberk. Then she asked if he had seen Sharon. The guy replied that there was no time for that, since her brother very quickly took his sister into the room. In addition, she said that she did not want to talk to anyone today and asked not to disturb her. Dianta thought to herself that he probably felt guilty for not being able to stay close to his youngest. Our heroine told him not to think like that when the young man asked what she thought he was thinking about. Valerian replied, whatever it was, let him not think like that. The young man made the best choice at the time, which kept Sharon safe. This is the honest truth. So she respects him and is very grateful for the decision he made, after which she added that the Duchess in any case also thinks so. When Iberk started getting too close to her, our heroine began to get very nervous because she didn't understand why he was doing this. Therefore, she immediately began to move away from him to the side with the gait of a crab and think that maybe she said something wrong. But the knight immediately pressed himself close to her and said that he had said that she should not run away from him. Dianta muttered that she had not even thought about it. Valerian thought to herself that his hands gently hugging her shoulders gradually descended lower and lower, and a chill ran through her skin. She was very panicked in her heart, but decided that she couldn't show it and needed to say something. Therefore, she asked the young man why he had come to her in the first place. The guy replied that he was worried about whether she got to the estate normally. When our heroine said that she hoped he didn't wait too long, the guy replied that it was about an hour, to which she exclaimed why he had to wait so long. Dianta noted to herself that he began to move away, apparently realizing that she was scared. The guy added that he couldn't see her off. That's why he came, and besides, he didn't tell her the most important thing. The girl exclaimed that apparently this was about his illness. For sure, it is necessary to agree on all the details in advance. It will be more convenient. When there was a heavy pause, Valerian asked if she had said something wrong, but the young man replied that that was also not bad. He hoped that she had not forgotten about him while she was busy preparing for the ball. The girl replied that no. As she had told him earlier, she asked Fernando to get information about magic poisoning. She would have to visit him again. The knight asked when she planned to pay him a visit. He would like to go with her. Dianta replied that tomorrow she agreed to meet with Sharon. At the same time, she will go to the alchemist every time something unpleasant happens to her. The next day, they usually spend time together. The young man muttered thoughtfully that it means she won't be able to leave alone, unnoticed. The girl replied that it was okay, she would do it when the time came to say goodbye and ask her brother to see Raffaello off. The young man's expression immediately changed, and he asked if she meant Haint Valerian. Our heroine replied that, and she thought to herself that he was clearly obsessed with his younger sister. When Eberk muttered something about an inconspicuous lout, and Dianta said that she was going alone, I noted to myself that meeting with Fernando alone would be even more convenient and unobtrusively increase the frequency of meetings from 2 to 4 days. The guy added that her brother is also a direct heir, so he should not be a fickle person. He can probably be trusted to accompany Sharon. Valerian noted to herself that this does not look like trust. If you think like that, then this could be the first serious test. We need to quickly send the Duke home and teach his brother how to behave. So she exclaimed that he should be careful and all the best exit on the terrace. Noticing that the young man did not take his eyes off her, the girl wondered what this strange reaction was. Maybe it was too rude to ask him to leave the terrace. Then he asked if the girl really wanted to send him out so quickly. She replied that no, they just discussed everything in general terms and ended the conversation. Iberg objected that there was no such thing as discussing in general terms and ending the conversation. Dianta replied that it was too late, he had better go back to avoid danger. Then it dawned on her that the guy had only been answering her questions all this time and had not even begun his important conversation, after which he asked that she really thought that he was so cowardly that he was afraid of the dark. The girl replied that no, it was a little later, so she was worried about him. The young man said that in this case he was forced to leave her so as not to cause trouble, but before he left he would like to hear the answer to his question, which she did not answer during the ball. At first, our heroine did not understand what he was talking about, but then it dawned on her that he meant the prince. Dianta asked if she made some mistake, since she was very afraid that he would be discovered. She doesn't remember the details of that situation well. Then she grabbed her head and asked to give her time to remember. But the knight said that she shouldn't bother herself with this. The girl didn't do anything like that, so there's no need to remember. Valerian didn't understand why it was necessary to ask this at all. Then the young man stood on the railing and said that they would see each other tomorrow. Looking after him, our heroine wondered if he really came in the middle of the night to ask just this. Meanwhile, Levios called Caden and said that he was giving him until tomorrow. He urgently needed to get information about one person. Let the man find out all the details about Nathan Diego, who he is, and what he is like. The guy thought it was an ordinary ball until he met a bright girl with red hair. Her behavior was different from other ladies. No matter how tenderly he looked at her, she did not react to it. On the contrary, Dianta spoke directly and was even a little cunning, as if she knew that all this was false. But in fact, most people do not distinguish between straightforwardness and goodwill. But most of all, he was worried about Nathan Diego. On the one hand, he is very similar to Duke Raffaello, with whom the emperor dreamed of connecting Deborah, but on the other hand, he does not. The young man already thought that they were simply very similar, but this look could not be confused with anyone else's. The guy clearly wants to get her. If he is not a duke, then this will be a big relief, but if the prince is right, this will also only benefit him. The next morning, the girl thought that it was good that her parents didn't say anything about yesterday's incident. Apparently they didn't want to upset themselves again. Mother said that lately she has been learning how to collect bouquets, This helps to put her body in order at the same time. Let them try to do this one day. The father asked if this was necessary, because there was already one beautiful flower in front of him. Our heroine stated that they found another way to ruin their mood. The man continued to say that how such a charming maiden became his wife. He still could not believe it. Dianta noted that it is not for nothing that they say that children are a reflection of their parents. Perhaps this is the inner strength of their family. Will she really become like that too? Will lay her head on her beloved's shoulder and have conversations with him, will hold his hand, joke with him, and laugh. Then he will raise his head and look into the beautiful gray eyes of his lover. Our heroine suddenly came to her senses and thought that she had gone crazy. Why did she suddenly introduce the Duke? This is simply unthinkable. Apparently, the Duke's appearance played a big role. When the girl came to her senses, a little, she saw the stunned faces of her parents and the maid. Dianta immediately exclaimed that it was just her brother meeting Sharon. And then there was their conversation, so she suddenly felt somehow strange. She doesn't plan to date anyone, yet she just thought about it for some reason. Mother exclaimed that this is called loneliness, but our heroine objected that she was not lonely. Her mood just changed for a moment. The father stated that status and gender are very important in this matter, but the most important thing is to meet a person who will appreciate and love her. For example, a man like him. The girl got a headache from all these moralizing and wanted to run away. The parents did not pretend for long that they were worried about her, and again turned their attention to each other. Valerian stopped thinking and picked up her fork again because she had 2 meetings today. After some time, the brother asked where his sister was going and why she couldn't tell him about it. Our heroine exclaimed that she was really obliged to tell him about her personal affairs. Before meeting Sharon, she needs to look at Fernando because of the dress she was going to ride in a mail carriage, since there are robbers everywhere. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard, who said that she was late. When the real appearance of the Duke again surfaced in her imagination, Dianta decided that she needed to take it into her own hands. This is the brother of the main character, her future daughter-in-law. The young man came closer and asked what she was doing, but the girl thought that in fact he could be considered her relative. Had she really gone crazy? The guy added that he asked her not to avoid him. Was she really that afraid? Dianta thought to herself that he was just so handsome that lewd thoughts immediately appeared in her head, so she avoided it, but she couldn't tell him all this to his face. The Duke said that if she didn't want to talk, then there was no need, and gave her a note which said that in 3 hours Sharon would be waiting for her near the largest tree. Our heroine stated that it means he came to convey this message. But when Iberg put her on a horse and they set off, Valerian realized that no. On the way, the girl wondered why he had such a strong chest and strong arms. Suddenly, the Duke pulled her closer to him and said that if she continued to squirm like that, she might fall off the horse. Our heroine shuddered and suddenly lost her balance, after which she began to fall down. But at the last moment, the young man managed to pick her up and put her back in her place. The Duke muttered that it wasn't so unpleasant for her, that she was even ready to fall, but then added that, okay, it doesn't matter. Then he got off the horse and said that there was only one of her, so he would give it to her, and he himself would try not to be late and would follow the girl. While Dianta was galloping on a horse, she did not see Eberg. Perhaps he deliberately took a detour. They had almost finished talking with Fernando, but the Duke was still not visible. Yet after some time, the young man finally appeared. Our heroine was very happy and turned to him so that he would listen to her. But the young man simply ignored her and told the alchemist that he had one question for him. The girl thought to herself that this was a very strange feeling because he had never ignored or avoided her. Unlike herself, it felt like a ladle of ice water had been dumped on her. Valerian then heard him ask how long the energy charge could be extended. The alchemist replied that with the first prototype of the cure, it lasted for about 4 days. Only this time he plans to give him a new combination of drugs so he cannot say for sure. The young man stated that it turns out that there is no way to use sedatives yourself without the help of Lady Dianta. Fernando replied that he had so far calmed the attacks perfectly, thanks to her. Is there any point in resorting to dubious methods? He needs to take samples from him, and in no case should he expose himself to danger. Let the guy not forget that he is his only experimental subject, that is a patient. After which the alchemist exclaimed that first he would go and bring ready-made crystals. The girl thought that he had been pestering her for a whole month, asking to see her, why now he wants to increase the duration of the medicine. Then our heroine began to try to shout to the young man, but he continued to ignore her. But then the young man could not stand it, and asked if his touch was really so unpleasant to her. Dianta thought to herself that she did not feel unpleasant. On the contrary, there was a feeling of coolness. If it were some kind of object, then she would want to continue holding it in her hands. But the more the Duke touches her, the more it makes her heart clench. Iberk freaked out and said that her long silence spoke for itself, so it was not necessary to voice the answer. The girl thought that she just wanted to say about her feelings, and that she didn't understand herself, but she said out loud that that wasn't the point at all. The guy ignored this and said that in the future he would be careful not to touch her again if it was unpleasant, but she was afraid to say so let her forgive her for everything. Our heroine began to reach for his hand and ask why he suddenly began to apologize, but the young man abruptly walked away from her and replied that he was only thinking about himself and his feelings because of this trouble almost happened today. Therefore, Dianta has no need to force herself to touch him. After some time, Sharon exclaimed that her friend had finally arrived, and with Sir Diego at that. The elder brother muttered that she said that she had things to do. Was it really about this guy? The sister replied that they crossed paths by chance. The Duke confirmed this and added that they met by chance on the road. He was late because he was looking for an umbrella suitable for a lady. The sun is too bright during the day, so it is better to use it. Our heroine noted to herself how smart he is, because this is an excellent excuse. When Dianta asked where she and Raffaello would go, the Duchess said that they had 2 horses, so they could go somewhere they had not been together. The girl immediately remembered Fernando's words, that they must return the horse, because for them it is just an animal, but for him it is a jewel. When Haint said that he would go with Sharon, the Duke objected and said that he would go with the lady. The elder brother replied that this is impossible. Why, if her fiancé is present here? Iberk exclaimed that he really wanted the knight to ride with Lady Valerian. In this case, bad rumors may spread about her. Our heroine noted to herself that only recently he himself had not even thought about the rumors and was trying to grab her hand. Dianta thought that they had become a little closer, but the guy was trying to distance himself from her. Sharon resolved this conflict situation, so she and her friend rode to a beautiful place on a horse together. The girl said that it seems that there is a sunset hill there. Now it's clear why they call it that. Raffaello replied that it was true she visited there often as a child, so she always wanted to come with people dear to her heart. Suddenly, the voice of Haint was heard, who said that he and she would now come there often. But the beloved offered to come in the same composition as today, 4 of us. When the Duke said that they could get off the horse, the guy exclaimed that he was going to do it anyway. People were staring at them all the way. Sharon said not to worry, because they look great together. It looks like the guys are best friends. After some time, Dianta noted to herself that, as always, she was responsible for the arrangement of food on the bedspread. Suddenly, a strong wind blew, and the blanket began to cover the piece of cake. But a young man arrived in time and immediately held him back. Our heroine put her hand on his and thanked him with all her heart. And then she quickly jabbered that it was best to prepare and start dessert. After some time, Dianta noted that it took longer than she thought, and all because of this couple who did absolutely nothing. As for the Duke, she felt how he wanted to rush towards them in order to separate them, but did not dare to approach, although he was standing just a step away from them. as if he was afraid to spoil this beautiful view. Valerian was already starting to get very irritated by this situation, because as much as possible, he himself told her not to come close to him anymore, and now he stands aside, so sad. But if you think about it, Dianta at one time also gave Haint and Sharon a lot of advice and then only watched from the sidelines. Our heroine has endured everything for too long, and the blood of her dynasty has not boiled in her for a long time. Among the many rumors in high society, there are such words: "Do not wake the sleeping Valerians," all because their clan was known for its hot temper. Then she approached the young man and tried in every possible way to attract his attention. But he did not seem to notice her. Unable to bear it, the girl exclaimed that he could have succumbed to her, but thought to herself that she was one of those who lack patience. Although she had made a firm decision, the Duke had been running away from her for minutes in a row. After which, she asked for forgiveness and said that she was wrong. The young man asked why she was suddenly saying this. She had nothing to apologize to him for, but Dianta objected that she should. Our heroine was very nervous, so she tried to avoid him because he is very attractive. And when a handsome man constantly approaches her, she becomes embarrassed. Paying attention to his barely noticeable smile, Valerian realized that this was a great relief, because he seemed to have cheered up a little. But then she added that she naturally does not perceive him as a man. But still, when it comes to the opposite sex, it is not surprising that she is embarrassed if he comes close to her. I thought to myself that of course it happens that she has some vague feelings for him, but there was one problem that compensated for this moment, namely the fact that her brother and his sister were engaged. This is not particularly welcome in aristocratic society. After all, marriage is considered a means of establishing new connections with other clans in order to increase one's power, so double matchmakers were perceived as something like a merger and acquisition of a company. Therefore, he probably doesn't want to get involved with her. The guy asked if she was serious when she said that she didn't perceive him as a man. Dianta exclaimed that it was true. In turn, she will also try not to give rise to misunderstandings. She realized how difficult it is when someone avoids you, even if there were no bad intentions. It is very exhausting and gives no peace. The girl promises not to follow him around anymore, so let him not run from her. Then she offered to promise that they will not avoid each other. Iberk replied that this time he did not force her. She suggested it herself. The girl said that it was all a complete misunderstanding and asked him not to avoid her. He would make sure that she remembered these words. Our heroine noted that it seemed like she had dug her own grave, so she exclaimed that so much time had passed and it was starting to get dark. They probably talked for too long, lest Sharon think anything strange. The Duke asked why she shouldn't think like that. Dianta replied, because she might be worried that they were having a very serious conversation. Then they saw Raffaello, who was standing near a tree, and said that she was just calling them, but they still didn't go down the hill, so she came for them. Sometime later, the girl asked if Sharon wanted to tell her something, but the friend said no. Valerian thought to herself that she never stopped looking straight at her, then at Iberk, and then looked at Haint, as if she was about to cry, and was thinking about something again. The Duke handed her a cookie and told her to help herself. There were his favorite raisins inside. The young man immediately interrupted and asked what he was offering. The girl, raisins are also called demon nipples. What kind of low-grade food is this? Our heroine immediately asked what they were up to. Were the guys in kindergarten, or what? Then Sharon called her and asked if they could talk in private. When they stepped aside, the girl said that she would like to tell her something about Sir Diego. She thought for a long time whether to tell her or not. But since they were all there together, she decided that she must tell today. Our heroine thought about what she wanted to tell about the young man that was so terrible. Sharon added that she knew this would sound unexpected, but she wanted to say that Sir Diego is actually her brother. When Dianta exhaled with relief, her friend asked if she was upset. Raffaello did not tell her the truth, not because she did not trust her. Valerian took her hands and replied that everything was fine. To be honest, she knew it from the very beginning. When she first met him, she accidentally saw him without a wig, but thought to herself that he asked not to tell others about his illness, but did not say anything about not revealing his identity. Even if the guy had changed a lot, it was difficult not to recognize in him the image from the pictures that she saw in her house. She didn't talk about it all the time, because a lot had already happened lately, and she was also waiting for the moment when her friend herself decided to tell her. Sharon asked if she could continue to address him as a knight and not as her brother. The girl believes that the young man should calm down when he sees how she lives. Raffaello herself wants to do everything in her power for him, so she asks her to have fun together today. After some time near the palace, Haint stated that this was a terrible fellow traveler. Iberg stated that he completely agrees with him, so he is the first to be removed. Sharon asked if she noticed that the relationship between them had not gotten better. Dianta replied that they would rather fight than be friends naturally. If the brother finds out who Diego really is, then it will be a different conversation. The girl replied that it wouldn't come to that, but Haint shouldn't be trusted with such secrets. She wanted to try to make them friends by force. Our heroine thought to herself that if they continue to treat each other this way, their relationship will completely deteriorate, and this is fraught with consequences. In order to prevent such a situation, we need to deal with one side. After which she told her friend that it was time for her and her older brother to go home. The young man began to smile welcomingly and shout out his beloved's name so that she would pay attention to him and they would say goodbye. But his sister stopped him and said that he always says that he needs to say goodbye to his fiancée, but he keeps her waiting because he's been chatting with her for at least 2 more hours. After which, she told him to wait a little near the horse, and the guy was indignant that where had it been seen that older brothers were treated this way. Suddenly, the Duke asked what he and Raffaello were talking about on the hill. Our heroine replied that she apologized for deceiving her and told that he was her brother. The guy said that it was probably not easy for her at heart. When Sharon said all this, the conversation could captivate her, so he would ask directly if she accidentally let her know about his illness. Dianta replied that she didn't tell her anything. Maybe she'll be offended by her later, but Valerian agrees with his opinion. She can't let her friend spend this month while he's here in tears. On the other hand, our heroine does not intend to continue to deceive her, but simply agrees with his decision. However, for her, her friend comes first, and only she has her own limit. Then she added that she would save him, no matter what the cost. And until the healing occurred, she would keep his secret a secret. The young man began to smile, and asked again what it meant to save him no matter what. The girl felt very awkward, and the guy decided that she was making fun of him. Then the girl exclaimed that since she had already answered all the questions he was interested in, then it was time for her to go. Suddenly, the young man grabbed her hand and looked into her eyes and said that then he would trust her and would wait. When the young man looked up, he saw his younger sister standing on the balcony. Sharon couldn't believe that there was something between her brother who hates being touched and Dianta. It was very interesting what was really going on between them. The next day, the brother asked what she was talking about with that night. She told him that she wanted to say goodbye, and she whispered to him about something. The girl exclaimed, "Since when is he so interested in her affairs? What's wrong with him?" The young man asked what kind of strange reaction this was. Did she really like him? If anything, haint against such a union, only through his corpse. Our heroine answered whether he himself even understands that his words and thoughts are absurd. She just said goodbye to Sir Diego, and nothing more. The guy muttered that it was good. We said goodbye like that. Why be so angry? Valerian screamed, because he was following her like a dog, and pestering her with his stupid questions. Haint exclaimed, "What kind of dog? How does she even talk to her brother?" The girl objected. Why is he torturing his only sister since the morning? After some time, a maid ran to our heroine in a hurry and said that she had received a letter from the imperial palace. It had been sent by the prince. It was said there that their conversation was imprinted in his memory, from which he enjoyed it. But he happened to hear from his sister that she left the ball early. If the girl doesn't mind, then he would like to invite Dianta, her partner also, Lady Raffaello, to the palace tomorrow. He will send a servant to them. Our heroine noted to herself that he pretended to ask her consent, but he himself wanted her to obey his words. It is immediately clear that he is a treacherous and cunning member of the imperial family. He looks so cute, and he himself is a real raccoon. After which she told the maid to bring a cape, since she remembered that she had personal matters. The red brick house looked ordinary from the outside, but this place was known to a narrow circle of people, a cheap tavern for workers, and a hotel for travelers. One of the guests said that he heard from a friend who works in the imperial palace that the princess ran out of the hall right in the middle of the ball, shouting at the maids. After all, Prince Livios should become the ruler. Dianta found Noel Wood there, who is her friend and also the owner of this nameless hotel. He is also the head of the most famous information guild in the empire called Owl. This did not at all fit with his modest appearance. Earlier, the girl read in the newspaper that while she was lying unconscious, a gold mine was discovered in the west. If she had remembered this earlier, she would have bought those lands. Then it dawned on her that if she used this correctly, she could help her older brother. Later, she felt bad for not using the information she had. Recently, there have been rumors that the Information Guild is inciting people to revolt. The novel said that the Imperial Palace declared persecution of this group, but Noel, who was the head, came from an aristocratic family, so he was one of the first to know about it. In order to make friends with him, the girl used the fact that she moved into someone else's body several times, sold him some information circulating among the aristocrats. Thanks to this, the guild was able to grow faster. When they went into another room, our heroine asked if there was anyone there, because all the workers belong to the guild, so they are always ready to collect information. The young man replied that of course, not she can be calm, because they are alone. The guy just wanted to talk to her. It's good that she came herself. His people say that lately they often see her in an alley, not far from the laboratory of that mad alchemist who is studying the northern lands. Wood does not think that she appears there without a specific purpose. Dianta noted to herself that after all, it would not be possible to deceive him, although she was still going to pass on the information to him when the cure finally appears. Then she answered that she was collecting something about the northern lands. There was no exact answer yet, but as soon as everything was ready, she would tell him. The guy asked if it was connected with Raffaello. Valerian replied that it was not much. The young man exclaimed that he knew it. She starts to fuss only when it comes to her brother and Sharon, constantly asking to tell gossip and rumors. Dianta thought to herself that perhaps the prince really invited them because he felt guilty. But if it comes to Haint more precisely, then he has no benefit from her. With all this, he invited only her, Sharon, and the Duke. Something is clearly wrong here. After which, she turned to the young man and asked him to tell him about Prince Livios. The next day, His Highness sent a golden carriage from his servant. Looking around, our heroine noted that they were gathered around it. Seemed that all the statues of the world, the prince's maternal relatives, were a famous trading guild. After all, they were difficult people. Suddenly, the girl heard someone address her by name and did not understand who else was there. Then a young man appeared, and Dianta asked in surprise how he even found her. The guy explained that when he arrived, he noticed how she entered this part of the garden. Judging by the fact that the lady was walking towards a dead end, he assumed that Valerian was lost, which is why he followed her. Our heroine thanked him for his concern and asked where Sharon was. Weren't they together? The young man replied that his sister was walking in the garden. You don't have to worry about her. The girl objected that he came with her. Was it okay that Burke was with her now? The young man replied that it was nothing. The Duchess, on the contrary, was the first to invite him to follow her when she saw that she was heading to a dead end. Dianta asked if something happened to Sharon because she felt something was bothering him. The young man explained that he just suddenly realized that his sister was more mature than he thought. He was dissatisfied with the fact that this time was so fleeting. And besides, the reason was not Raffaello, it was something else. When the Duke took her hand, Valerian asked why he suddenly needed her. Iberk replied that in this way he would not lose the crystals, because 2 whole days had already passed. After these words, the young man barely managed to contain his smile. After some time, the prince greeted the guys and told which side Lady Valerian should sit on. Our heroine noted to herself that he wants her to sit next to him and has already thanked her out loud. The young man smiled affably and replied that you're welcome. These are generally accepted measures, and so that it wouldn't happen again. Like the last time when the animals came into the dining room, he put them in a cage in advance, so there's no need to worry. Then he turned to Lady Raffaello and said that he had heard that his sister had behaved rudely to her at the ball. The Duchess smiled and replied that there was no need to worry, everything was fine. But the guy objected that as an older brother, he would certainly like to apologize instead of her. Dianta noted to herself that it seemed that the princess was not even listening to him. Instead, Deborah, on the contrary, tries to catch her gaze. Maybe it's because she saw her crying. His Highness turned to his sister and said that she needed to apologize for her action. The girl collected her thoughts and apologized for that evening. As soon as she remembers what people were whispering about, then she becomes uneasy. Lady Raffaello replied that it was okay, she had already forgotten and forgiven everything. After this deathly silence hung in the room, it was clear that the princess felt awkward. Livios then turned to Sir Diego and said that he had heard that he was staying at the Raffaello estate. The young man replied that yes, he was temporarily enjoying their hospitality, but had he told His Highness about this? The guy replied that Natan did not report this to him personally, but he was a fairly famous knight in the north. He happened to hear about this from his acquaintances. Our heroine noted to herself that the prince was blatantly lying. He could not have heard anything like that about him. Immediately after her request, Noel sent a man to find out about the prince. He received information through a man from Livios's entourage, whom he bribed. The man said that he was given the task of finding out everything about Natan Diego. He then added that however he and Dianta were at the banquet. Does this mean that they have a close relationship between two lovers? The girl did not expect such a question and did not understand why he decided to drag her in. Valerian immediately objected that the relationship between them was not like that at all. She did not have a partner, so Diego agreed to help her. That's all. His Highness came close to her and asked if she really had no acquaintances at all. Our heroine wondered if he really couldn't find the information, so now he's trying to check it. Noel said that he also checked Sir Diego, but he couldn't really find out anything, since Nathan was an orphan from a bankrupt aristocratic family. The only thing he learned was that the guy lost his parents early and that at a young age he moved to the north. Then she replied that she did not have such acquaintances, so she asked him. Livios asked if he could ask her a personal question. In this case, the girl replied that, of course, let him ask. After which, His Highness asked if our heroine had a lover. Dianta replied that now she is more interested in spending time with her family than thinking about a romantic relationship. The time has not yet come for this. She is also still attracted by the idea of developing her own abilities, but she thought to herself that he was definitely testing her. The prince is known for never being involved in a scandal, so why is he suddenly showing interest in her? The young man asked that she really didn't even have time for him, but then quickly added that this was a joke. The girl thought to herself that in 10 years, Livios would stage a rebellion and take the imperial throne. If she starts a relationship with him, then she may be sucked into this political whirlpool. If he has sincere sympathy for her, then some problems may arise from this. His Highness then added that not everything he said was a joke. Our heroine ceased to understand what was happening and what he meant by these words. Noticing that rust appeared on Sir Diego's fork, the prince said that he thought that this was being monitored. Usually when even a small speck of rust appears, the thing immediately deteriorates. Then he added that he would like to ask the young man something, whether he happens to like Lady Valerian. Still, he has such a fierce look, Probably like many nights, the guy replied that he had been in the north for a long time and had faced death more than once. Perhaps that's why his look became stern. If this caused him inconvenience, then he asks for forgiveness. However, if Nathan says that he has an interest in the lady, will he take it back? His Highness looked at him defiantly and replied that of course not. The girls felt all this tension. They were extremely awkward, but they didn't know what to do. Then the prince laughed and said that there was no need to be so wary of him. Dianta did not understand why he was acting like this. In any case, the knight has demonstrated his attitude, so now you can relax. Now he invites all guests to move on to the main course. Valerian had no doubt that Livios was using her to test the Duke. After all, the Raffaello he knows would react with complete indifference. Since childhood, he was famous for his strong character and inaccessibility. The Duke, who is not so easy to make friends with, fell in love at first sight with a lady he doesn't know well. This would be very unlike him. That's why the prince called her with Sharon, in order to see how he would behave. Most likely, the Duke immediately guessed about this plan. Otherwise, he would not have reacted so ardently. Remembering what he answered to the prince, the girl did not understand why her heart suddenly beat so hard, and some unpleasant feeling appeared inside. After the storm subsided, the meal in the imperial palace passed in complete silence. The prince left first, saying that he had problems in the trade guild. He is helping to run the affairs, run by his maternal relatives. After he left, everyone else gradually began to gather. The princess stated that they had already finished eating, which meant they could go. Already in the carriage, Sharon was indignant that this could not be. They saw what happened at the ball. Our heroine replied that usually there are serious rumors about high-born persons. She could simply feel insecure because of the views of others. The Duchess was indignant that her friend really sided with Deborah. Iberg thought to himself that the girl's marriage was probably a requirement of the emperor. It makes no sense to blame the still very young princess for something, especially since she also suffered. But what Sharon mocked is pure truth. But it cannot be said that she is truly evil. Lady Valerian will certainly behave differently, just as he did. Seeing her interact with someone else was unpleasant, but he couldn't stop looking at her. Someday, the day will come when these feelings will turn into his weakness, and they will begin to poison his life. Before they become bitter enemies, he must nip them in the bud. But despite all this, even in his imagination, the guy cannot kill her. Sharon said that when she talked to the princess, she felt like something was being taken away from her. Dianta objected that Her Highness could never take her away from her friend. Iberg continued to think that he could not treat her well just because she is his sister's best friend and the person she needs. Since when did he become interested in people for some special reason? The Duchess added that she loved Lady Valerian very much, so she was jealous when she talked to others. Listening to their conversation, it dawned on the young man what kind of feeling he was experiencing. The event that simply forced him to admit his feelings came much faster than he thought. At the estate, a few days before they met, my mother said that since the girl herself had hinted that she was lonely, she didn't have to meet him. Just let him go on this date once. She can't get married without knowing what a real date is. Dianta thought to herself that when she was 10 years old, she liked someone. It was some kind of boring ball where adults talked to each other, so they often met with him and played in the garden. The woman continued to persuade her to go, just once. She hardly begged this option from the best matchmaker in the world, Baroness Charity. Before marriage, it would not hurt her to talk to men. It was difficult for the girl to withstand the pressure of her mother, so she replied that maybe it was really worth going. The choice of Dianta entailed great consequences. News immediately appeared in the newspaper whether the Baroness managed to successfully bring together that same Lady Valerian. After reading this headline, the princess was taken aback that the girl was really going on a date. The prince was also surprised and muttered that she had said that she was not interested in relationships. Raffaello were also shocked because the girl didn't tell them anything about it. Looking at the mountain of letters, the maid stated that it seemed that there were rumors about her date. Dianta was indignant at why strangers always meddle in other people's personal lives. Noel wrote that he believed that they were friends with him. But the girl did not say a word about such an event. If the guild had sold this information first, they would have earned dozens of gold. He thought that she was not interested in men. Our heroine was very angry and burned the letters because she was annoyed by this attitude. But one of the letters was from Fernando. The guy wrote that they didn't have enough sacred water. The maid immediately asked where she was going to go. They actually had a lot to prepare. The girl replied that she would go out for a short time, but the maid objected that they did not have time, since the date was in 2 days. Our heroine tried to argue that isn't this enough, they could do everything tomorrow. Daisy replied that since she could not attend the ball, now she must appear before people in an ideal image. But when the maid turned around, Lady Valerian had already jumped straight out the window, and without shoes. As a result, not only the maid tried to catch up with our heroine, but also her parents. After some time, the girl still managed to break away from them, and she thought that she needed to find a loophole that she had used in childhood. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, saying that this passage had been sealed a long time ago. It was the older brother who said that he hid it when they grew up, so that they would not be scolded, because they no longer climbed there anyway. Dianta was indignant that he was of absolutely no use, because she could still get through. The guy was indignant at the way she was talking to her brother. Valerian replied that there was not that much difference between them. The young man said that he was actually going to cover her, but apparently it's worth calling people here. As soon as the guy was about to shout the word, Mom, the girl began to persuade him to shut up. But a moment later, Haint fell to the ground unconscious. The Duke, who approached, unnoticed, simply knocked him out. The girl asked if he had come to see her brother. The guy asked if he looked like a man who had nothing better to do. Dianta asked if he was feeling unwell. She was now on her way to Fernando, but they could not start treatment right there, perhaps after she finished her business. The young man asked who she thought he was. Our heroine didn't understand what the problem was. Did he really want them to start treatment right now? Then she answered that for Duke Raffaello, he is the only relative of her best friend, the one with whom they will soon become related. I thought to myself that why he just frowns and doesn't say anything. It's necessary to leave quickly before people see them. Then she added that the young man is also someone who values his family very much, and he is also a very handsome man. When she first met him, she was slightly frightened by his coldness, but now she knows that he is not like that at all. If the guy had officially arrived in the capital, he would have long been known as the first handsome man. The young man thinks a lot about his family. He is probably the most caring person she knows. His future wife will probably be very lucky. Unexpectedly, the young man asked if she was afraid of him. The girl replied that she was no longer Burke, added that he did not know that she had such an opinion about him, after which the young man suggested starting their acquaintance again from this place. Dianta noted to herself that unlike their first meeting, the Duke smiles quite a lot. Then she clarified where exactly they need to start. The guy replied that he didn't even know what she thought they should start with, after which he drew attention to the fact that Valerian was barefoot. Without thinking twice, the young man picked her up in his arms and told her to hold on tight so as not to fall. Then he jumped over the fence like some kind of superhero. While the girl was confused, the Duke added that first she needed to look at the shoe store. If she walked around like this, she risked catching a cold. What about that shoe store? There seems to be a lot to choose from. Dianta thought to herself that she should take her down because she can walk on her own. Then Burke added that he doesn't mind if she wants him to continue carrying her. Our heroine replied that it's good, she really likes it. When the guy asked if she meant that he was holding her in his arms, the girl screamed that no, she was saying that she liked that store. The young man muttered that it was a pity Valerian could not understand when he managed to become so crafty. In the shoe shop, the Duke personally put shoes on her feet that he had chosen himself. Our heroine felt as if she had turned into Cinderella. After some time, Raffaello said that she seemed to be heading to the alchemist. Why then did they come to the temple? Also, in the one that is so far from the center, Dianta explained that Fernando said that he had run out of holy water, so she wanted to take some from a friend. Iberk replied that he did not think that they would immediately give her holy water if the girl came without warning. Our heroine replied that her friend was very capable. A woman immediately came out to them and said that Mr. Matteo was waiting inside. Only a few knew about the existence of Tifania. He had outstanding abilities to predict the future. The guy was above all religions, and in terms of skills, they were compared to a great priest. He was even called God's messenger. Giving him a few boxes of holy water was nothing, even though he was blind. Hearing footsteps, the prophet asked for forgiveness for keeping them waiting. It's just that at this time he always prays. Our heroine replied that on the contrary, she was afraid that she had interfered with his prayer. The young man objected that no, it was he who asked to invite her inside. He was even uncomfortable in front of the new guest. This is the only place where they can talk in silence. He saw in a dream that the guys would come, which is what they usually say at the first meeting. I'm very glad that we saw each other again or something. The girl thought to herself that she was already ready to kill him for unnecessary conversations, and he also came up with some kind of prophetic dream. Suddenly, the Duke would think that this was some kind of pseudo-religion. The clergyman noted that he seems to be talking too much. He's just very happy to meet, and if he said something unnecessary, he asks for forgiveness. Unexpectedly, Iberk stated that he said that he had seen a prophetic dream. How can a priest throw such ridiculous words? The guy sees that the temple is quite poor. Maybe he is luring parishioners here with cheap tricks. The young man replied that the Duke might not believe him, but there was no need to draw hasty conclusions, as the prophet had already said he was just a priest in a small temple. The girl noted to herself that after all he was a real messenger of God. He did not chicken out even in front of Raffaello. After which the clergyman added that he had prepared what Miss Dianta needed. Iberk asked if he saw this in a dream, but the priest ignored him and told our heroine that this time he would not take money from her. Despite the nickname of God's messenger, according to the plot, he was not accepted anywhere. This world rotates with the help of strength and power, and Matteo belonged to the Temple of the Moon, which is not the main religion. This fact was not in his favor, and as a result, the prince's knights began to oppress the minor religions, and he was captured. The prophet certainly could have known in advance that her circumstances would help him. The young man did not understand why they were looking at each other and smiling. After some time, Dianta said that she was very sorry, but to tell the truth, they were in a hurry. Matteo replied that it was okay. It was enough for him that he saw the miss. In fact, she would like to talk to him more, but the Duke acts like a 5-year-old child and is constantly naughty, saying that they need to hurry up. Even now, the young man does not hide his displeasure and stands with an unfriendly expression on his face. The prophet seemed to feel this and said that he had already said that he did not need to behave so warily. He is a priest and has no interest in marriage or romantic relationships. Our heroine thought to herself, what kind of unexpected statement is this? Why bother talking about it at all? The priest continued that he would say that he could help. They came together with his close friend. If he wanted, he could talk about his future. He usually doesn't offer something like this to other people, but for his sake he can make an exception. Our heroine began to panic that she really hoped that the Duke would not beat him. And if so, what should he do if he was arrested for beating the priest? Today the atmospheric pressure is already low. Suddenly, the prophet added that he had just seen something. Let him continue in the same spirit, and Miss Dianta will understand everything over time. When she clarified what this all meant, Matteo said that that was all he could tell. After some time, Fernando reported that with the help of that sacred water, he made new crystals. Immediately, it is necessary to transfer them to the test subject, that is the knight, so that he can try it. Valerian thought to herself that he is some kind of crazy, although quite nice. Then the alchemist said that she was getting married soon and would no longer be able to come to her. The girl did not understand why this friend was getting married. The young man explained that he saw an article about her in the newspaper. If she gets married, it would be better to find another firecaster. The Duke said that he did not need to worry. What he was so worried about would not happen. Fernando exclaimed that then it was time to start. Have they prepared the ball for video recording and notes? After which, they began to treat the young man who asked her for this favor. And so, the usual life of our heroine continued until the day of the date arrived. The maids collected her from early morning and said that she needed to have a voluminous hairstyle and that the sun's rays are the main enemies of girls, so she should definitely take a hat. When Noel met her at the restaurant, Dianta did not understand what he was doing there, but the young man smiled friendly and said that he would take her to her place. On the way, the young man asked why she was looking at him so intently. Our heroine muttered that it was simple. In fact, I thought to myself that I should have guessed even then, when the guy sent that letter, that he would do anything to make fun of her and her date. Still, this is at the request of my mother, especially judging by the portrait. He should be a rather attractive man, so she will just look at him and leave. But when the girl saw Sebastian Boton, she noted that he looked completely different. Perhaps Noel just decided to make fun of him and brought someone else on purpose. When the guy decided to pull a chair behind her, Dianta thought that he still seemed to have manners. But when she almost fell, the young man immediately began to ask for forgiveness and say that he seemed to be too excited, trying to please her. Our heroine replied that it was okay. Everything was fine. After which, the girl asked if he had to wait too long for her to appear. Sebastian replied that, to be honest, it's a long time, but for the sake of a date with such a beautiful lady, you can wait. Dianta did not understand in what sense, because she arrived 5 minutes earlier than the appointed time. The waiter then asked what the young people would order today. When Valerian opened the menu, she saw a note that there were a lot of visitors in the establishment today and did not understand what it was for. After which, she said that they would bring her cream soup with calf meat. The guy clarified whether one soup would be enough for her. When our heroine answered that, yes, since she had slight indigestion in the morning, Boton exclaimed that he also had a stomachache because he was so worried before meeting her that he did not sleep all night. However, due to her headache, Dianta did not immediately guess what Noel's note meant, namely that today, not only he was in the restaurant, but also other people watching her. Haint annoyedly asked Sharon why this night was also here, after all they had agreed to meet together. Raffaello replied that she promised her brother that she would go everywhere with Sir Diego. And in general, they are now secretly spying on someone else's date, so it is necessary to behave quietly. The young people replied that they would try to be patient and behave with restraint. The lady wondered if Eberk really liked Dianta so much that he even agreed to follow her. When she found out that her brother was interested in her, she began to worry whether her friendship with Valerian would deteriorate if they separated. But in fact, these were in vain worries, since the young man always keeps what is dear to him. In childhood, he personally mended the blanket with which he covered himself, and even still keeps it in his chest. After which I began to dream that if they got together they would have double dates. Suddenly, there was a loud cry that he did not advise her to lead such a lifestyle. Sebastian, most of all, hates cunning women who rely only on their appearance. She does not attend banquets, so the guy thought that Dianta was different from other ladies, but now he is convinced that she is exactly the same. There is nothing to even look at except her face. 2 swords sharply closed on his throat. Haint hissed what he had just said about his sister. The Duke added that he had better refrain from unnecessary statements. Boton did not understand who they were. A little earlier, Dianta listened to him chatter that most of the lands in their kingdom belong to his family, and he also likes to save money, so he saves a certain amount from each salary. He is sure that they will become a wonderful couple, since they suit each other, as she sees the guy has an elegant appearance since childhood, which made the hearts of many girls tremble. But he was looking for someone who would be on the same level as him. Our heroine was thinking about something of her own, and hearing that he said that he had met his soulmate Valerian, congratulated him. When the young man asked what she said, the girl realized that she had blurted out anything, after which she thought that there were only handsome men and beauties around her. Despite his character, Haint is considered handsome, and the appearance of this young man does not seem impressive to her. Our heroine prefers the type like Duke Raffaello. Sebastian asked, how about officially starting communication with him? When the girl began to turn away, the guy clarified that he did not mean for her to answer right now, but Deonta asked for forgiveness and added that she believed that he would meet someone better than her. The young man objected that they could become a wonderful couple. His wealth and her beauty would go well together. A more harmonious couple still needs to be looked for. Besides, she is not an heiress someday. She will have to leave the Valerian estate. Let her agree that Botan is a very profitable match for her. The girl replied that she had more than enough money, but thought to herself that her parents would leave an inheritance to her, too, since they did not single out one of the children. Suddenly, the Count shouted that he did not advise her to lead such a lifestyle. He most of all hated cunning women who rely only on their appearance. Except for their face, there is nothing to look at. This is exactly how the situation developed, in which the brother and the Duke simply could not help but intervene. When Sebastian was indignant that since when did ladies hang out with such uncouth people, Sharon shouted to him that enough was enough. If he continues to insult Deonta, then she will not stand aside either. Haint hissed that it seems he can't see well with his little eyes. The guy is the brother of this lady. He just insulted. Does he understand that his words will be conveyed to the head of the Valerian family? Our heroine asked everyone to stop and first explain what they were doing in this restaurant. That day, conversations in the estate did not stop until the night Miss Charity, with a pale face, apologized for suggesting such a candidate for a date. Naturally, adding that she carefully found out everything in advance, and this simply could not happen. A statement was filed against the Count in court for moral damages. Deonta said that Lady Raffaello helped her along with the knight who serves their family. Hint added that, after all, the family of knights is special. Even Sharon showed willpower and courage. When the mother asked what kind of knight this was, the son explained that Diego was guarding his beloved. The woman noted that he was doing well because this situation did not concern him at all. In fact, it was dangerous to treat the Count this way, after which she offered to invite him to dinner and treat him to delicious food. Then she asked if everyone would have time tomorrow. Her family did not expect her to make such a proposal. As a result, the girl thought so much about the Duke that she could not sleep. The guards asked why she had already gotten up because it was still early in the morning. Deonta said not to pay attention to her and mind her own business. Valerian was thinking about her mother's words. Burke, after all, hides his identity and took an extremely big risk with his behavior yesterday. Fortunately, the newspaper did not write anything about him. It only said that on the date, according to the service staff, the Count behaved in the most terrible way. The girl noted that it was funny. It looked like Noel tried his best, and he himself pretended to be a restaurant employee. In a normal situation, this would have angered her, but now it was time. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard, who asked what was so interesting written there. Our heroine screamed in surprise and asked where he came from near her estate. The guards immediately shouted, "Who is he that dares to approach their mistress?" and let her immediately go into the house. But Deonta objected that this was her acquaintance. Noticing that the young man was covered in blood, Valerian told the knights that there was no need to worry, he would go with her, after which she dragged him by the hand along with her. When they stepped aside, the girl asked if he was wounded. The guy replied that he just gave a warning, and that's all. Having examined his hands, our heroine noted that there were no wounds, and the blood was foreign, whether it was an ordinary fight or murder. Then I asked the young man who he beat or what happened. He shouldn't attract attention to himself. Why does he constantly expose himself to danger? What will happen if he is recognized? The Duke replied that no one would know anything he dealt with, everyone except that scoundrel. Burke keeps things clean. There is no better way to intimidate a person than to let him see in person. For example, demonstrate to this person reprisals against those who protect him. Dianta thought to herself that she was worrying in vain. She had completely forgotten what kind of person he was, and then said that now the Count would not be able to open his mouth for fear of dying. Then she asked what that man had done that he interfered in this matter personally. Unexpectedly, the Duke replied that Sebastian acted stupidly and committed a simply unforgivable act, not suspecting that the guy was watching him. He tried to harm what belonged to him. Our heroine asked in surprise that something had really been stolen from him. She thought to herself that she didn't even know what surprised her, more the fact that someone dared to steal an item from the Duke, or the fact that he tried to damage it, exposing himself to such danger. The young man asked if she was worried about him. Our heroine replied that, of course. The Duke replied that he was very pleased to hear that she was worried about him. Apparently, he needs to continue to make her worry about him. From time to time, Dianta thought to herself, is he going to continue fighting until he bleeds? Maybe he has problems with his head. Therefore, she said that in general, he was speaking such terrible words. She was not only worried about him now, so there was no need to even think about such things. After which, she warned that next time she would tell his younger sister everything. The young man muttered that he was leaving. She was worried about him before. Our heroine immediately realized that she had blurted out too much, but it was too late. Then she decided to change the topic and asked if he knew that he was invited to a formal dinner. Her parents sent an invitation to him. And Sharon, they want to thank Burke for helping her. The guy explained that he had not been at the estate since lunch, so he had not heard anything about it. The girl noted to herself that he was just a workaholic, after which she asked if she was distracting him from his work by chance, since he was apparently very busy. The young man replied that he had already dealt with everything, so it was okay. He was just taking a walk and accidentally wandered into the estate, so they would soon see each other for lunch. Some time later, at the Raffaello estate, the Duke's sister came into the Duke's room and asked where he had been since the previous evening. Burke may not answer, but let him tell her one thing, how he feels about her friend. She would very much like to know what her elder brother thinks of Lady Valerian. She appears to him. The next day, Sharon and the Duke arrived for a formal dinner. Things started out pretty smoothly. After some time, Haint said that of course he could have done it alone, but he was still grateful to him that he intervened and stood up for his sister's honor. The young man replied that he did what every knight in his place should have done. After the guys shook hands and immediately began wiping them with a handkerchief, Dianta wondered why they weren't picking on each other today. Then she noticed that her friend was behaving strangely and asked if she wanted to tell her something, but the Duchess replied that no, she didn't want anything. Then Haint asked if Sharon could go somewhere with him. He had a gift for her, and it probably should have been delivered by now. The girl immediately began to push her lover and say that of course she would go with him, and she herself winked at Dianta, but she did not understand why Raffaello was looking at her like that. Our heroine asked if the Duke would follow them. Burke asked if she wanted. This Valerian replied that it seemed to her that he began to care less about her brother. The young man replied that Sharon offered him a deal, so he is now thinking about whether he will agree or not. After some time, the voice of the older brother was heard, who said that you could fall like this, so it would be better for him to carry them. But the Duchess objected that no, these are her flowers, so she will carry them herself. The young man laughed and said that he could not understand where his beloved was and where the flowers were. The girl asked if he exalted her too much. Our heroine noted to herself that because of the flowers, her friend was indeed not visible, but she was also worried about the question of why the Duke was acting so quietly. Haint stated that he specially gave her this bouquet because he wanted to say something. After what happened with his sister, Various thoughts were spinning in his head. For example, that she could go to the north, and there she would meet some young gentleman and marry him. Therefore, the young man decided to personally go north and obtain permission to marry from her brother. If he officially gives permission for their union, will she marry him? The girl was a little confused, so there was a long pause. The groom immediately became gloomy and asked for forgiveness for not being able to resist and hastening. Dianta noted that he was shocked because it was not easy for him to say such words. For them, the north is an environment completely opposite to their nature. His words mean that he is willing to risk his life for Sharon. It was a carefully considered decision and marriage proposal. Now the brother feels as if he was refused, so one can understand why he is in a stupor. But the Duchess babbled that this does not mean that she is refusing him. Suddenly, the voice of the Duke was heard, who said that he did not need to go north. Haint asked if he suggested that the guy convey this through him. But the young man wants to talk, not with the knight, but with Duke Raffaello himself. Eberk replied that this is why he proposes to express everything to him. After which the young man added that the one he was so eager to see was Sir Diego, Duke of Raffaello. The guy objected that if you look at the family portrait, it never looks like him. Let's say the guy could wear a wig, but it's impossible to change the color of his eyes. The young man replied that this is why he did not want to say anything. Because of his emotions, he put Sharon in a difficult position. This is the reason why he does not like Haint. The young man was angered by these words, and flames immediately appeared around him. Our heroine wondered if he had really gone crazy for deciding to use his abilities. But the Duke took out his sword, which easily dealt with his fire. Valerian was very surprised, since this is the same Raffaello kind of ball technique that cuts even magic. After which, the young man clarified whether Haint now believed him. When the elder brother realized that this was a real duke in front of him, he fell into complete despair. A few days later, at the Iberk estate, a young man galloped around him and said that he had brought wine made from grapes that grow only in the lands of Trollans, aged 30 years. Then he took out men's shoes and asked if he liked them. Dianta noted to herself that he was holding up quite steadfastly in the current situation. Sharon came into the room and asked when her friend had time to come and why Haint was behaving so strangely. The Duchess is very afraid that nothing will happen, that they will fight again. The girl replied that they were in the Duke's estate, so this would not happen, although it was unknown what would happen if the brother went outside. When Raffaello began to panic, Valerian immediately added that she was joking. Iberk doesn't like her older brother, but she loves this man, so she doesn't think that the Duke will harm him, so it's better to leave them and go dry her hair, and she won't get sick for long. After they left, the young man noted that as soon as Haint found out who he was, that is, he immediately began to behave differently. The young man exclaimed that he reacted very quickly. He instantly takes action in any situation. This is an excellent quality. After some time, the guy entered the girl's room, and Dianta asked if there was progress, but the brother dejectedly replied that not much. The Duchess asked if her lover could speak to her. It seemed to our heroine that it was worth leaving them alone, so she went outside. The sun was shining so brightly that it blinded her eyes. Maybe she should return home and take a nap. Suddenly, the Duke appeared and asked if she was hurt, but the girl replied that the sun was just shining very brightly. The guy put his hand on her eyes, and she felt this coldness, after which he asked if everything was okay. Valerian answered that yes, and thanked her for her help. When Iberk said that if she was already going to leave, then he would accompany her, our heroine exclaimed that there was no point because she arrived in her own carriage. The guy replied that naturally he knew that she did not come on horseback, so he was not going to accompany her home. It dawned on the girl that he meant that he would simply walk her to the carriage, but the Duke added that if she wishes he can accompany her all the way to the house. Dianta objected that it was not necessary, after which she wished him a good day and quickly began to walk away. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the prince was reading an article about an unsuccessful date, after which he gave the order to deal with this Count Boton. so that there would be no problems in the future. The man replied that he would do it immediately. His Highness added that, however, he still had not found out anything about that night. The subordinate replied that he contacted all the information guilds of the capital. Only from one they managed to get at least some information. They sent him a portrait of this knight as a child. This guy comes from a bankrupt aristocratic family. His parents died of illness when he was just born. He spent half his life as a beggar on the street. Levios noted that it was a pity because he wanted to show his best side to the emperor. The man sent spies several times to keep an eye on the duke. Most of them either died on the way or all contact with them was lost. Even if someone managed to get to the northern lands, it was not easy to get out of there. Then the prince said that they had not heard anything from that man. Lately, perhaps something had happened. The servant replied that they had not heard anything from him for a whole month. Livios asked if there was a magic device for such cases. The man replied that they couldn't use it now, since there was no energy left in the magic crystals, after which he fell to his knees and asked for forgiveness for not warning him in advance. The young man replied that it was okay, he still planned to meet with his uncle tomorrow, so he would get the crystals himself. When Eberg first arrived in the north, he thought that the harsh living conditions would quickly break him, as happened to other visitors. However, at some point, the northerners began to see him as an irreplaceable person. His assistant, Aaron, had so many tasks and was so tired that it seemed he would not die for long. The Duke, when he left all matters to him, said that he would return soon, but in fact, he had been gone for a very long time. The real Nathan Diego asked when he could go take a bath because he smelled so bad. The young man replied that he would bring water and he would wash himself here in the corner. The guy could not blame him for this, but their master who had left. Diego objected that if the Duke had not taken him in, he would have been left to starve on the street. So on the contrary, he was very grateful to him. Except for some unpleasant sensation, the assistant asked him to endure a little longer. Meanwhile, Haint dreamily wondered where it would be better to hold the wedding ceremony. Probably this should be an even more luxurious place, something where the engagement took place. But then the brother will have to go to the capital, and this is inconvenient, but he cannot lead all the guests to the north. What to do? Dianta asked why he was so noisy. The guy exclaimed that today he had a date, so he came to make fun of her. Don't worry, there will be a man who will tolerate her terrible character. The girl was thinking about what they agreed on. Then it seems that the conversation ended well. The young man asked if she would come too, but our heroine replied that no, because today she would go to her friend. The elder brother exclaimed, "What other friend does she really have friends?" Valerian angrily replied that in fact she does. At the meeting, Noel asked that she had finally realized how valuable a person he was and what brought her to their tavern. The bartenders exclaimed that this waiter is extremely gallant. Let her accept his feelings. The guy immediately picked up and said that he would look after her, but Dianta asked him to stop. The men immediately said that it was better for him to give up this idea. They would introduce the lady to the nephew of one of them. The gay immediately said that today too much attention was focused on them, so it was better to go to another place. His friend runs a good cafe. On the way, the young man said that this was their first date, but the girl told him to calm down already, after which she shoved a note in his face, on which one question was asked whether that article was his work. Noel replied that yes, after which he ate this message, adding that it was edible paper, very tasty, would she like to try it? But our heroine replied that no. After that, they continued the conversation, using notes to summarize. He received an order from the emperor to find out everything about Nathan Diego, so he sold false information. Fortunately, he met with Mateo in advance and was able to make a fake portrait. It dawned on the girl that His Highness had guessed that the Duke was at the ball, and now there is more evidence. Noel bowed and thanked her for using his services. She charged 20 gold pieces, taking into account the old friendship discount. The girl was taken aback and muttered that she didn't have any money with her now. The young man replied that in that case he offers to have lunch together. The waiter asked if he was really going to order the entire menu. The guy replied that this is the cost of the profession. When another establishment comes, he definitely needs to try everything. Suddenly, our heroine heard the voice of Haint, who addressed the Duke and called him brother, after which he added that he had found out in advance that according to rumors, this restaurant was opened by the court chef. Iberk irritably asked, since when did he become his brother? The guy replied that after all the young man is older than him, so naturally you need to address him in this way. Sharon asked them to stop and asked why they only talk to each other all the time. Raffaello immediately asked if he had heard her words. The young man would be very grateful if they ended the dialogue here. Dianta asked Noel to look at the next table and suggested quietly leaving here. The young man immediately said that he knew where the back exit was, so he dragged her along. But they failed to escape unnoticed since the Duchess saw them running away holding hands. After some time, the girl said that she was very tired. Could she go home already? But the companion replied that no. After which, he added that she should go with him to the trading store, since he needed to buy something there. That place looks quite gloomy, so he is scared to go there alone. Dianta said that a person who is 2 years older than her does not seem cute, with such an expression on his face. In the end, she gave up and succumbed to his whining. This building looked more like an abandoned building, where they were doing something illegal. The young man explained that there was no other place where one could see the same range of goods. After all, crystals can only be bought in government stores, and personal information must also be indicated. And in this place, without all these formalities, and at a low price, you can buy low-quality crystals. This is a fairly well-known shop in the narrow circles of the shadow world. Our heroine clarified that perhaps they should then hide their identities, but the young man replied that he knew the owner. Suddenly, a voice was heard that asked what the lady had forgotten. Here, Dianta, stuttering, asked who it was, but noted to herself that these people dressed in such a way as to hide their identity. I take off the hood. The guy said that she offends him. How could it be possible not to recognize his voice at all? When the servant tried to stop him, the prince replied that everything was fine. The miss was also going to this shop. She wouldn't start rumors about him, because now they were in the same boat. After some time in the carriage, our heroine felt extremely awkward, because she did not think that she would meet Livios in such a place. The young man clarified whether they really didn't have to give her friend a lift. The girl replied that yes, because if someone recognizes him, then trouble can happen. I thought to myself that I couldn't introduce Noel to him, because in the future he would destroy the Information Guild and kill all its members when he ascended the throne. After which, Dianta asked why he went to such a place. The prince asked if she was really interested. The young man explained that this man is his uncle, Baron Clive Desiderio, and he is also the head of the Scoforia Trade Guild. Sometimes he accompanies him when he needs to explore the market. Since His Highness has answered her question, can he now also ask her one question? The girl began to panic about what to answer if he suddenly asked what she was doing in the shop. But suddenly the prince asked how he liked her, because someone like Livios is pretty good, isn't it? The guy read in the newspaper that she was wooed. For the count, did she really reject Sebastian? For him, this is already a little too much. Our heroine replied that she had nothing like that in her mind, but unforeseen circumstances occurred. The young man replied that he too would like such unforeseen circumstances to happen to him. Sometime later, leaving the carriage, His Highness said that he would look forward to their next meetings. When it turned out that Dianta was sick, the maid exclaimed that she knew so lately she has been going out too often. How many times did she tell her to immediately change clothes and wash herself after going outside? But the lady kept putting off both of these things, as a result of which she caught a cold. The girl thought that she would recover quickly, but the more time passed, the higher the temperature rose, and she simply slept. Perhaps the body itself was sending her signs. The doctor noted that in her normal state, she has an elevated body temperature due to genetic characteristics. Mother asked if this meant that medicines would not help here. The man replied that this illness was associated with physical characteristics. Most likely the priests would not be able to cope with this either. Our heroine would like to say that everything is fine, but you can't tell from her voice. If it's so hard for her because of a simple fever, then how can the Duke endure attacks of that illness? In the future, we must put even more effort into treatment. At night, Dianta woke up because she was very thirsty and saw that her mother was sleeping near her bed. Then it turned out that not only mother was there, but her whole family. Did they really stay next to her on purpose? They say that when you are sick, your soul becomes weak. Looking at her relatives who were so worried about her, she just wanted to cry. Perhaps her abilities were lost due to illness. The air in the room was very hot. Therefore, I decided to go open the door, since for sure her whole family was also hot. As soon as Valerian stepped out onto the balcony, a young man immediately appeared and asked how she was feeling. Our heroine thought to herself that there were parents and Haint in her room. Where else could he come from here? It must be just a dream, so she can hug the Duke tightly, which is good, since she was just very hot. When she pressed herself against him, she felt very good for a moment, but then her body began to burn from the inside. Apparently, she had not yet fully recovered. The young man noted that it seemed like her temperature was rising again. Was she all right? Our heroine replied that she was in pain, but thought to herself that she did not want to part with him even for a second. Raffaello said that her temperature was higher than usual. Valerian objected that his, in fact, was lower than usual. Iberk explained that it seemed so to her because she was not feeling well. The girl asked if he felt the same. The Duke asked to clarify what exactly. Dianta replied that just now, even when she hugged him, everything was boiling inside her, and she was tormented by thirst, surprisingly. But now this feeling has passed, so her soul felt very good. The young man wanted to answer her something, but our heroine interrupted him and asked him to just stand there a little longer. The next day, Mother said that if there were guests, they would know about it. Everyone was sleeping, and if someone had suddenly sneaked in unnoticed, her father or brother would have immediately known about it. Our heroine muttered what it meant. She had a dream. The woman replied that such things happen, that because of fever, dreams are confused with reality. Dianta still didn't fully understand what it was, but the situation confused her very much. Noticing that she was all very red, my mother exclaimed that she really still had a fever. Haint immediately said that he would go and call the doctor, but Valerian objected that everything was fine. It was just a cold. The guy exclaimed that fire magicians never get sick like this. She can at least imagine how surprised and scared they were. Her parents couldn't even go to work. They spent the whole day near her. He will not bother her, but if something doesn't work out, even with his efforts, only then will he ask for her help, so let him not remain silent when it's hard for her. The young man will keep his mouth shut, and she should under no circumstances overwork herself. Regarding her illness, the doctor said that it was difficult to determine the cause, so magicians and alchemists were convened, causing complete chaos. Mother reported that it seems that due to the high consumption of mana, the body physically could not stand it. But this is the capital, not a battlefield. The daughter could not use so much, Dianta exclaimed, which is true. She noted to herself that it seemed that during each treatment, mana was spent more than expected. A day passed, and she could hardly get out of bed. Her brother still had to watch her. The girl asked in surprise that he had really postponed the meeting with Sharon in order to look after her. The guy replied that, of course, there was no choice, because his parents had gone to work, and tearfully begged him to take care of his sister. Our heroine said that Haint was already so big, she thought that he was just a fool, blinded by love. The young man asked her not to speak like a grandmother, after which the young man added that in fact, he was an adult from the very beginning. Dianta was indignant at how he could even hit his sick sister, but Valerian just snorted. Suddenly, the stern voice of the Duke was heard from behind, who asked that he had really hit his sick sister. The older brother exclaimed that there was simply a misunderstanding, but the girl did not understand how he entered so silently. Next, Sharon appeared at the door, who said that she had heard that he was engaged in assault. Then she added that she was joking. She knows that Haint could not do that. The Duchess thought that fire magicians did not get sick. The guy replied that they were also very surprised when they found out, but this was something other than a simple cold. The sister spent a lot of mana, which is why the temperature rose, despite the fact that Dianta has nothing to spend that much on. Raffaello whispered that yesterday, Iberk was very worried. At night, through someone he received the news that his friend was sick and immediately left the mansion. It dawned on the girl that this was not a dream. Caresses, hugs, and all those words about pleasant coolness were reality. Then she went out onto the balcony and began to try to reassure herself that this was all just supposed to be a dream. When the Duke appeared again and asked why she had gone out, our heroine began pointing her finger at him and asking if he was real. Having made sure that yes, Valerian asked that perhaps he had come yesterday too. The young man replied that yes, he came to visit her. The girl asked how she even got to the bed, since she didn't remember it at all. The young man replied that naturally she fell asleep in his arms, so he brought her to bed. No one even knew about this. It seems that everyone was tired of courting the lady. Dianta did not understand what was happening to him. His expression was very sad. After which, she asked that perhaps she had done something wrong to him. Iberk replied that, of course not. It was only his fault that he dragged her into this. After all, the reason why she is sick is not the treatment of the young man. Our heroine asked why he felt guilty, because she herself volunteered to help him. The young man replied that they needed to end this. Dianta clarified whether he decided to stop. When the girl noticed that his breathing had become faster, which meant he was feeling ill, she wanted to take his hand, but he pulled her back sharply. When the guy asked what she was doing, Valerian replied that she was going to treat him. Iberg replied that he had already told the alchemist, so there was no longer a need for her treatment. The girl objected that there was neither a new method nor a new device. The young man said that he could be patient. Dianta thought to herself that his illness depended on magic, and she only had a high temperature due to the high consumption of mana. After which, she said that he had a difficult illness. If we put his breathing aside, what would he do with his frozen body and black smoke around him? Moreover, how will he be able to hide this from his younger sister? The Duke replied that in any case she might lose consciousness again. Wasn't it because of him that Valerian had used up all her mana? The girl noted to herself that he was avoiding her gaze, and this began after Haint announced the cause of his illness today. Our heroine wondered why he was so nice today, and replied that it was not his fault, all because she does not know how to properly control her powers, and if suddenly it becomes difficult for her again, he will help her. Does he remember yesterday? It was so cool in his arms that she was able to relax and fall asleep, and then surprisingly the temperature subsided, so now everything is fine, only thanks to him. The Duke asked if she was afraid. The girl answered why she should be afraid, because he would save her again. I thought to myself that he needs her, and when he spends a lot of mana, Iberk becomes necessary for her, so nothing else is scary. After the treatment was completed, our heroine said that now it was time for her. She wanted to quickly leave, but she almost lost her balance, and immediately thought to herself that no matter how you look at it, there's no way to hide her fatigue. The young man again picked her up and said that he would accompany her to bed. Dianta noted that due to lack of strength, she was completely unable to resist. Having put her to bed, the Duke told her to get well covered and sleep, but now it's definitely time for him. Valerian didn't want him to leave, so she asked if he could stay a little longer. Please let him stay next to her until she falls asleep. After which, she asked if she could take his hand. The guy replied that it was good, he would take care of her. Peace of mind, let her rest. Meanwhile, at the Raffaello mansion, the guards shouted to the beggar to go beg elsewhere. The man objected that he was a knight of the north. The guy was indignant that what kind of knight, without documents, in which case he could be a prince. It was the real Nathan Diego, who thought to himself that he had given them to the Duke, but should as soon as possible transfer the affairs from the north. A little earlier, the assistant told him that if he puts on a helmet, then only his eyes will be visible. Everyone will think that he is an ordinary knight. The young man objected that as soon as he takes out the sword, it will immediately be revealed. A storm is raging outside, and it is different from the usual one, since several vortices have formed at a time, plus the appearance of monsters that begin to attack in a crowd from their habitat, not far from the northern castle. The young man objected that if there was a storm, there it would not be easy to send the letter. Nathan asked, "What about a magical communication device?" The young man replied that there was none such a thing could not be bought in the poor north. Moreover, if a person from the northern lands has this thing, the emperor will immediately send people. Usually at the end of a campaign, you can live peacefully for about 2 or 3 weeks, but this time the Duke did not go for a day or two, so there was a hypothesis that it would take a month, but no more. The assistant miscalculated. If this continues, the secret spy may find out about the disappearance of Eberk. Diego said that he thought it would be right if he pretended to be a duke and pretend that he had left the castle. The assistant objected that he had never been in the north alone. The guy replied that if this continues, his disguise will also be revealed. If the Duke had not saved him in childhood, he would have been dead long ago, so he is willing to accept this danger. Let him not worry so much. He will try to avoid monsters as much as possible. And when checking identity, there will be some way, be it a bribe or something else. But the young man guessed that he could get into big trouble. Iberk suddenly appeared and asked what kind of noise they were making here and who he was. The next day, Nathan exclaimed that he finally felt alive. He no longer remembered the last time he washed himself. The Duke asked what prompted him to come here in this form. It was clearly not just like that. The young man replied that Mr. Aaron asked him to accompany the gentleman to the north. The guy clarified whether they should move out immediately. Diego was surprised that Eberk really didn't want to come back, but he heard that the lady would be in danger if the guy didn't leave, and he usually doesn't like to leave the mansion, so he does everything in secret. After which the young man asked if it was because of his sister's refusal to go north. The young man replied that from the very beginning, he did not plan to take her to a place where few people could walk in the yard. The guy noted to himself that this was his longing for Sharon, and a jealous desire to test the man who wants to take away his precious sister, then clarified why he was hesitating. Then, the Duke thought that he needed Mrs. Dianta, and she needed Raffaello. When the girl asked to stay next to her, it evoked feelings that he had never experienced. His heart beat faster than usual, and his blood circulated noticeably, after which the young man sadly replied that they would leave in 1 day. Having prepared the bouquet, Sharon noted that she should give this to Iberk and tell him to visit her friend. This should help the development of their relationship. Unexpectedly, her older brother appeared in her bedroom and said that he would not be long. The Duchess immediately recognized the young man who stood behind him. It was the real Nathan Diego. The girl remembers the day when the two of them left for the north. But why is the young man here again? Raffaello immediately became restless, and she began to guess that today was the last day. She immediately rushed to her brother and asked why so suddenly. The young man asked for forgiveness and replied that he simply had to leave. Sharon understood that one day he would return back from the very beginning. His brother took risks to meet her because he had to disguise himself and hide his identity. But if he leaves this time, then it is unknown when they will meet next. So she burst into tears and exclaimed that the guy said that they would be together for a whole month. Meanwhile, our heroine finally recovered, went for a walk, and admired the beautiful garden. Everyone behaved extremely strangely, as they forbade even going out to get some fresh air. Even people like Matteo, whom she had to visit in person, due to the lack of a magical communication device, received a ton of gifts and letters of welcome. The clergyman wrote that he would like to visit her right away, but unfortunately in his situation, this is impossible. Therefore he wishes her well-being and is always waiting for her at his place. Suddenly, it started to rain, and our heroine didn't even understand when the clouds had time to roll in, because the weather was so beautiful. The maid noted that, but it was necessary, and this happened precisely when the mistress had just recovered. The girl replied that that's exactly it. Fortunately, she was next to the mansion. The maid then said that a guest had just arrived, so she escorted him into the living room. It turned out to be Noel, who exclaimed that, "Wow, Deonta seems to be absolutely healthy." The girl asked what this strange reaction was. Did he really want her to continue to be sick? After which I turned to Daisy, told her to leave and not let anyone into this room. The guy exclaimed that this was a great relief, because he thought that everything was very bad. A couple of days before Mr. Mateo said that he saw her crying. Therefore, the young man began to monitor her behavior. Deonta asked that he was really investigating behind her back. It was a common cold, but thanks for your concern. Then she asked whether the clergyman really saw that she was crying. The guy replied that yes, and a lot, after which he began to demonstrate exactly how. Then the young man stated that since everything was fine, he had to go before the rain started pouring again. But our heroine asked him to stop. She thought his behavior was very strange, so she asked what the young man had done. Noel replied that it was not normal for Deonta, who does not know what tears are, to cry, so he contacted his acquaintances, namely Adelaide and Wolfgang. The guys exclaimed that the same Valerian was really crying and was on the verge of life and death. They should immediately move to her, and after that, the guy lost contact with them. The girl noted to herself that this was a problem. As soon as she remembered these two, among everyone from her past life, she tried to keep them as a safety net. Adelaide is a mercenary queen, a responsible and very strong-willed woman. She has a big soul, and everything always goes smoothly. Wolfgang is her opposite, a wandering poet who does not know responsibility and nationality. But he was an outstanding empath whose soul was easy to hurt, so he often cried. It seems that every time they encountered each other, hatred seethed in them, leading them to fights. The only thing they had in common was a misunderstanding towards each other. No matter how high a personality they were, no matter how much money they had, these two did only what they wanted. Adelaide, our heroine, chose as submission or suppression. Wolfgang created only the songs he wanted, following her steps. Valerian noted that she would just have to come to terms with it and get over it. Some time later, the maid asked if the mistress was really going to the training ground. The girl replied that yes, she did not go beyond. There is no need to worry when the condition has approximately stabilized. Sweating is a very good option. When Deonta first realized that she had been reborn inside a novel, she lived on the training ground for days on end. Until then, she was the only daughter, so she only watched her father and brother's classes without training on her own, because of which her parents even asked if she had any intention of becoming an heir, but it was a simple interest in her will. Therefore, until she decided to connect the two main characters, she worked almost tirelessly. The maid watched her with admiration and said that she was simply incredible. Valerian replied that such movements still did not mean anything to her, but noted to herself that she was convinced that she was not yet rusty. Suddenly, the voice of a young man was heard, who noted that she had finally finished. The elder brother immediately began to pull out the maid, saying that they needed to talk, but our heroine did not understand why they were leaving. When the girl said that she should wait a little, since she needed to take a handkerchief, the young man replied that it would not be for long, so there was no need for it. Our heroine noticed that he was wearing armor and did not understand why. Therefore, I asked if the Duke was comfortable in such an outfit on this rainy day. The guy replied that he was fine, after which Deonta asked if he came with Sharon. Hearing some noise in the corridor, the girl noted that she needed to go out and see what was happening there. Before this, the sister told Iberk that it was stuffy in the carriage, so she would wait in the corridor, let her talk calmly with her friend, and return back. After which the young man said that he could not leave her there for a long time, so he would be brief. Then he said that he needed to return to the north. Perhaps when the rain stopped, they could leave tomorrow. The girl began to get a picture in her head of why he was wearing armor and why he was so sad. Then she asked that if Sharon had not insisted on coming to the estate, would the young man have appeared on his own or not? After which our heroine screamed that he was really thinking of leaving without telling her a word. In principle, only take care of the sister of the Duke's soul, so it is not surprising. Even at their first meeting, he said that if he had stayed in the north, he would not have gotten sick. Dianta is tired of the increased work due to this situation. But now, even though her wish is being fulfilled, she is becoming very sad. The young man replied that he was leaving her, but would never forget her. After which, he thanked her for everything. Our heroine noted that he spoke as if they would never see each other again. Burke replied that this was quite possible. Returning to the capital is very difficult because he will become a burden for Sharon to come to a place where the illness does not leave him. If he knew that everything would turn out like this, he would not have come at all. Or rather, if he knew that he would have to go back so hard. Our heroine did not understand well what he was saying and wanted to ask him to explain. But suddenly, her elder brother and the Duchess burst into the room, shouting that something was wrong with the knight. The guys saw that Nathan Diego was lying on the floor in an unconscious state. The young man had icy skin and heavy breathing. Did he really catch magic poisoning? Haint shouted that it was necessary to first bring him inside and call a doctor, but our heroine objected that there was no need to do anything. The elder brother asked in what sense, since the man was feeling bad, but the girl replied that she would help him. After which, she sat down next to the guy and asked Sharon for forgiveness for not talking about it earlier. She has nothing to say if she really knew her friend would still be angry. So she added that when she finishes, she will explain everything. 5 minutes before, the guy was spying on the Duke and Dianta, thinking that this was really the same lady from all the conversations. Sharon noticed this and said that it's enough to stop doing nonsense, because eavesdropping is not good, so let him move away from the door. A little earlier, the sister said that Lady Valerian was not a stranger. The guy replied that they were strangers to her. The girl replied that she did not believe his words. He was lying because he was simply scared. Nathan noted that this was the first time he had seen such an expression on the Duke's face. He didn't know why, but he had the feeling that he had some kind of relationship with this lady. Then the young man sneezed very unexpectedly and loudly. The guys exclaimed if everything was okay with him. The guy replied that he was completely fine. But literally a moment later, the guy began to lose consciousness right before their eyes. When our heroine took the crystal in her hands and was about to help the patient, the Duke sharply grabbed her hand. Dianta was indignant that she almost used it on the guy anymore, and there would have been trouble. He then took the stone from the girl and gave it to Haint while telling him to use his fire magic on Diego. Lady Valerian began to resent that she actually had to do this. But the Duke stopped her again and said that it was impossible. What would she do if she went to jail again? Our heroine thought to herself that he wanted to leave without even warning. So why was he looking at her with that look again? When a magical reaction began with the patient, the elder brother exclaimed, "What is this all about? He can die like this." But the girl replied that it's okay. Very soon, it will all disappear. After which, Sharon approached her and asked her to tell her what was happening. Dianta realized that there was nowhere to go any further, so it was time to shed light on the truth. After some time, a friend stated that it turns out Valerian knew all about this from the very beginning. Our heroine replied that she did and asked for forgiveness. After which, she added that a cure for this magic poisoning had not yet been invented. The Duchess immediately burst into tears. Having calmed down a little, Sharon muttered that she didn't know about it, so she resisted going north. The Duke replied that that's why he didn't tell, so that she wouldn't blame herself. The young man, on the contrary, wanted to remember these days as the happiest time in so many years, and he was happy thanks to her. When their brothers went away to talk, Dianta felt extremely awkward, after which she turned to the Duchess and asked for forgiveness for not telling her about this earlier. Raffaello replied that everything was fine, they were friends, and the friend wanted what was best anyway. Iberk knows more about her than she thought because of her brother. The girl could not tell because they remained silent because they were worried about her. When Dianta replied that she was still sorry, Sharon objected that she shouldn't thank you for telling me at least now. And most importantly, thank you so much for protecting him from behind so that he could stay safe with her. Suddenly, Haint appeared behind her and put his hand on her shoulder. Our heroine was scared because it was unexpected. Because of this, the girl ran back sharply and crashed into the young man. I noted to myself that I was about to cry, so I was sensitive enough to be scared. The Duke told Lady Valerian to be careful not to get hurt, after which he said that it was time for him to go, and simply walked past her. But the girl stopped him and clarified that he said that he would go when the rain stopped. Did that mean tomorrow? When Iberk replied that perhaps our heroine said that then see you tomorrow, after which she added that before leaving it was necessary to say goodbye, the young man asked her to continue to take care of his sister. After some time, Nathan asked if they could not go after waiting another day, but the guy replied that no, they would go now. I thought to myself that this one day would definitely turn into two, and where there are two, there are three. Meanwhile, Dianta was thinking that, isn't it too much what Haint said last night? The Duke told him that it's not that he still doesn't like him, but the guy admits that no one can make his sister laugh like her lover, so let him take care of her. It felt like Iberk decided to leave right away because it looks like he came to say his last words. The young man is not going to leave without waiting for the rain to stop. One has only to imagine how anger overcomes her. It's not for nothing that they say that a bad feeling never fails. Therefore, our heroine decided that she now needed to go to the Raffaello mansion. On the way, Dianta asked why her brother followed her. The guy replied that by going with her, he would be able to see Sharon. Near the gate, the girl saw a strange young man and could not understand who he was, but it seemed that he was from the imperial palace. The young man said that His Highness the Crown Prince heard about her illness, so he brought gifts given from him. Our heroine replied that it was good she would accept them with great gratitude. When she added that she was now leaving the mansion, so please leave them inside, the guy's expression immediately changed. I noted to myself that recently the gifts have been cleared, but at the moment this is completely unimportant. Sometime later, having arrived at the Raffaello mansion, the guys learned that the Duke had already left. Dianta asked why he lied to her then. The guy came when he wanted, left when he wanted. Why didn't he let her say goodbye? The girl believed that during this time, they had at least gotten a little closer. But was it all a delusion? Now the young man will return to the north, and he will no longer need her help. When our heroine spontaneously exclaimed that he had left, Sharon asked if her friend was okay. Lady Valerian, there was nothing else to do but answer that everything was fine, after which she sharply turned around and began to leave, saying that she had come to say goodbye, but since he was not there, she was returning back. Then she added that let the elder brother still remain here, and she will go first. Once outside, the girl was surprised when it had cleared up so much. She wondered if it would still be cloudy. Meanwhile, the prince stated that having seen the gifts from him, she didn't even check them. If everything was so easy, it wouldn't be so interesting. In addition, the knight secretly left the mansion at dawn, and in the morning the lady visited the duchy. He does not believe that this is a coincidence. The subordinate replied that this was clearly not just the case. Livios asked why. The man replied that he was able to contact the man in the north with the help of the magic stone he gave him, but the Duke had never shown his nose since he completed the long expedition. Plus, the period coincides with the disappearance of the Duke, as well as the knight, Nathan Diego, who was also not seen. His Highness stated that there were somehow too many coincidences. The servant added at least, go and check right now. But the Crown Prince looked him straight in the eye and threateningly told him to leave it alone. After which, he began to influence him with the help of magic and said that he had changed his mind. The Duke is not important at all. What is more important is that he went through this. After some time, the maid came to our heroine and said that she had been imprisoned in her room for several days in a row. Let her be strong. Then she added that she had received a message, but the girl said to just put it somewhere. But when Lady Valerian heard that the letter came from Fernando, she immediately jumped up in bed. The alchemist wrote that he created new proportions of the cure for magic poisoning. Let them come together. This time personal observation also helps him a lot. Our heroine immediately informed the maid that she would go out for a short time. She would go alone, since she did not need to be accompanied. I thought to myself that if he found out that the Duke had left, he would probably be very disappointed. When the girl informed him about this new one, the guy fell to the ground and screamed loudly. Oh no, his only test subject. Dianta thought to herself that how could one be so desperate? Fernando muttered that it wasn't that they gave him. Then they took him away. He was there but he didn't see him often. Then the guy disappeared. Now he'll have to look for the test subject again. The alchemist didn't do that much. When Valerian asked him to calm down, the young man shouted that how to calm down. It makes a big difference whether he exists or not. His medicine is doomed. After which the young man asked that if this happened, then perhaps they would go to the northern lands together. Our heroine did not expect such a question, so she said that she needed time to think. The alchemist replied that he could not wait long. Having heard the answer, he would immediately go north. The girl asked how he was going to create medicine without her. The guy replied that even though it was illegal, all means were good, except that every time he needed it, he would go through familiar places, even if it took a lot of time. This time, he personally felt it through a knight who arrived from the north. He must get what he wants at any cost, but now he needs to be in the northern lands. A person who has personally experienced magical poisoning is undoubtedly different from the progress of the tests. Dianta noticed his expression and noted that it seemed that the Duke's return to the north had been the impetus for action. After which, she told the young man that she would contact him a little later. Then she immediately went to the clergyman, who noted that she was alone today. The girl said that the Duke had returned to the north again. Matteo stated that the reason for her tears was now clear. Our heroine replied that she actually did not cry even during her illness. It seems that his prediction was wrong. The guy objected that this simply cannot be. He believes that not only flowing tears can be called crying. This expression can also be used when upset about parting with a close friend or acquaintance who has suddenly become distant. Lady Valerian noted to herself that it is true. Although he is not a friend, he is clearly a close person to her. She did so much for him, and when he left, he easily left without even telling her anything. Surely the guy thought that since he got everything he needed from her, he could simply throw her away as an unnecessary thing. The voice of the prophet interrupted her thoughts, who said that frankly, speaking these words serve as an attraction for aggro, so they will instantly come running to her aid. Outside the doors, stomping and irritated voices immediately began to be heard arguing with each other. Then Adelaide appeared in the room, who was indignant about why she had come with this crybaby. And Wolfgang was wailing that why should he be with this inhuman woman. But when they saw Dianta, the guy's expression immediately changed to a friendly one, and they exclaimed that they had not seen her for a long time. When there was an awkward silence, our heroine asked how they had been doing all this time. The guy replied that it was good. However, it seems that the life of mercenaries is hard. The woman replied that for them, existing wounds are like an honor. This is proof of how hard they survive. On the one hand, you an idle grasshopper, but now you resemble perhaps fat like a real pig. The young man immediately began to cry, and he was indignant that she was saying such things, because he deliberately traveled only to areas known for their beauty, and courted her with all his might. The girl grabbed her head, wondering if this was really the conversation of a wandering poet who sings of destruction and mercenary queens. The clergyman decided to change the subject and asked how our heroine was feeling. Wolfgang immediately said that he constantly told her to take care of her health. Adelaide added that Noel said that she felt better. But is it really still not very good? The girl asked to tell how they found out about all this and came here. The guys said that they came to the hotel, and the young man said that she was most likely in the church. Dianta began to get angry when she found out that the head of the Information Guild reported everything to them. It was not enough for him to call these two. He also gave up her location. Meanwhile, in the northern lands, the Duke thought that he no longer felt anything. Only in the capital, his body was completely covered with chills and excruciating pain. But in return, he was enveloped in a previously unknown warmth. When the young man returned to the north, he could no longer remember those feelings, no matter how hard he tried to grab onto them. At first, he regretted his choice. Why did he run away? Perhaps the guy was afraid that having met her face to face, he would want to stall for more time. Or the young man was simply afraid to realize that they would never meet again. For the first time, Iberk wanted to take her and showed greed. And then when reality appeared right in front of him, he left of his own free will. Dangerous visits to visit stopped, and rightly so. Dianta would probably say that there are such people everywhere, and frowned menacingly. Therefore, it is best to stay in this place. However, knowing this, why does his heart day by day only become heavier? The next day, the princess herself came to visit our heroine. The girl thought to herself that she was with these two, and returned immediately as soon as she had a headache. But how did it happen? Doesn't trouble come alone? Deborah collected her thoughts in order to voice the reason why she came so abruptly. Valerian told her not to worry and speak more boldly. Suddenly, Her Highness asked what she thought of her half-brother Prince Livios. The girl did not expect such a question, and exclaimed in what sense she only thinks of him as a prince. Then he clarified that she really came all this way just to ask this. But why? Deborah answered because he likes Dianta. The brother told the emperor that he had a beloved. She believes that the same one is Lady Valerian. Our heroine did not expect such a turn of events and asked if he was even sane. Then she suddenly realized that she had blurted out this right in front of a member of the royal family. But unexpectedly, the princess agreed with her and replied that he was really crazy and she was very sorry. She believed that this would turn out badly for their imperial family, so she held back, but not with her brother. Therefore, if he suddenly confesses to her, then let him cut him off with the phrase that he is already meeting with that night in order to draw a line of demarcation. While Dianta was thinking about what to answer, Deborah muttered that apparently she had gone too far, but the girl objected that she had not. It must have been difficult for her to come to this estate, so thank you very much. The princess replied that once at a ball, Lady Valerian told her that she needed to be bolder, and she and Duchess Raffaello are best friends. She doesn't have such good feelings, and even though they bumped into each other on the balcony, quite by accident, she is very grateful to her, so she plucked up courage and came. Our heroine was very confused as to whether she really managed to influence the character of Her Highness. Deborah continued that everyone always said that she was to blame. The reason why the personal maid was scared and cried was because she looked at her scary, and a close lady spread rumors about her, so they did not get along. And all because the girl could not manage personal connections. After this, the princess was sensitive to any talk about herself. That day also happened. She accused the Duchess and vented her anger, so the atmosphere changed dramatically, and everyone thought that it was just Deborah mocking her. Surely all those people were punished, and she, in the end, also did the same, good or bad. Our heroine replied that there is no need to worry. Her friend Sharon will help. Even if someone is angry, it will be enough to sincerely apologize, and everything will go away immediately, although apologizing is still not easy. When the princess asked if she wanted to say that she needed to be bolder this time too, Dianta replied that she did and hugged her, after which she added that this is very commendable, so let her allow it to remain like this for just a little while longer. After Deborah left, the girl locked herself in her room as her parents did not understand what was happening. First, gifts from the prince. Now the princess came. They need to talk about what is happening. The elder brother also shouted that Her Highness had really come to their estate. Our heroine sat and thought that they were too hectic, so she would never open the door. Dianta sat down to deal with everything that happened today. First, there were the meaningfully spoken words of the clergyman. Then her old friends appeared, whom she had not seen for a very long time. And finally, the words of His Highness Prince Livios. These are definitely all the harbingers of the apocalypse. She should get ready as soon as possible. But why does she need all this? The girl was very angry, but still most of all, she was outraged by the ungrateful traitor Iberk. While she was freaking out, she hit her foot really hard and thought to herself that she couldn't concentrate because it all seemed to be happening because of the Duke. She just needs to forget, but the more she wants, the more she remembers. Is she really that disappointed? Maybe just go north, grab the young man by the collar, and shake him good. But still, because of the prince, the question of marriage is raised, because if the emperor orders, then the pope will not be able to refuse him. His Highness, no matter how you think, is completely unsuitable for her as a groom. Her betrothed from time immemorial must be handsome and have good skills. Also, the beloved should be cold to others, but warm to her, his woman. When the image of the Duke popped up in her head, our heroine began to get angry with herself, because no matter what she imagined, Dianta would never become related to the imperial family, or better yet, to anyone else. It seems that nothing can be done to avoid marriage. She will have to run away to where she will not be reached. Marriage to the crown prince will undoubtedly make her life more sophisticated, but if she is with him, she will become enemies with the princess and many other acquaintances, including Noel. Meanwhile, the father was telling his wife that it would be better to come again tomorrow morning. The brother replied that he was very curious if he could ask now. But the animals suddenly opened up, and our heroine exclaimed that it was very good since they were all assembled. After which, the girl said that she had made a decision. She was going to the northern lands.